Chapter 1031. Then, the residence of 9 Supremes became unprecedentedly busy. The warehouse was constantly filled with supplies, the library was also growing, and there were professionals in charge of the medical treatment. The cultivation of the children was not only limited to practicing martial arts, but also learning how to read and write. The atmosphere of the residence of 9 Supremes changed accordingly, becoming different from before. With so many children gathered together, a total of 5,000 to 6,000 people, it should have been normal to be noisy, but now, it was quiet everywhere. Whether it was the children who were walking on the road, reading, writing, or cultivating, everyone had a calm and solemn expression on their faces. Almost every child was thinking, what is the martial world? What Yun Yang was holding in his hands now was the homework that his disciples had handed in, filled with words. He finally felt a sense of relief in his heart. There were originally 19 disciples under the central peak, but now there were only 16 left. Among these 16 children, more than 10 of them had written very well, and it was obvious that they had treated it with great care. Among them, Yun Xiaofan had written about the martial world, which was life and death. One step forward, death; one step back, not necessarily life. Life and death were all about ability and luck. There was no need to worry about the rest. Yun Yang had a whole new level of respect for this explanation. This little girl really has a profound meaning and goes straight to the essence. She's really open-minded. Qingjia, on the other hand, wrote about the so-called martial world. It was the separation of life and death, the pain of the heart time and time again. When it was his turn to inflict pain on others, the martial world that belonged to him would come to an end, and there would be no continuation. This was considered a conventional understanding, simple and straightforward. There were not many new answers after that. Most of them wrote that the martial world was a life and death struggle. However, Yun Yang's eyes suddenly widened as he continued to stare. What did I just see? Did I just find a weirdo among my disciples? Upon closer inspection, he found that the author of this weirdo was Xiaofan. Yes, his third disciple. Xiaofan's realization was actually only one sentence, an extremely simple sentence. The martial world is, ha ha ha. Yun Yang pondered while stroking his chin, speechless for a long while. What the f*ck, what did this child write? I, as his master, can't even understand it. Is this profound, deliberately mystifying, or is he just spouting nonsense? During the cultivation break, Yun Yang gathered everyone together and said, Xiaofan, please recite to everyone your understanding of the martial world. You're in charge of organizing the junior brothers and sisters to share and learn. Yun Xiaofan answered as she rose to her feet and walked to the stage. Her little face was tense, and her face was full of the demeanor of an eldest senior sister. He read them one by one, all the disciples sat quietly. Initially, only when they read about their own experiences would their expressions change slightly and their eyes lift slightly. However, most of the time, they were still expressionless. Yun Xiaofan, who had always been cheerful, was stunned when she read the last one. World of martial arts is. Ha 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 ha. Sitting there, Yun Yang did not say a word to this expected situation, as if he did not see it. As the eldest senior sister, in addition to having the authority of an eldest senior sister, you also need to have the responsibility of an eldest senior sister. Yun Yang has made it very clear just now that you will be in charge of the organization, and you will be fully responsible for any changes that occur in the process. At this moment, Yun Yang wanted to see how far he, the eldest disciple, could go. After laughing, Yun Xiaofan suddenly flew into a rage and screamed, Xiaofan. Stand up. Xiaofan stood up lazily and coughed. Eldest senior sister, what can I do for you? Yun Xiaofan raised her eyebrows and said, explain to me. What do you mean by ha-ha? What do you mean by the martial world is ha-ha-ha? Only then did the disciples understand what had just happened, and a few of them could not help but burst into laughter. Don't laugh. Yun Xiaofan, who could not stand it anymore, looked at Hu Xiaofan with a straight face. Say it. Hu Xiaofan raised his head and said, it means to face it head on. In my eyes, the martial world is ha ha ha, what ha ha ha. The martial world is a matter of life and death, and you dismissed it with a ha ha? Do you think it's child's play? Yun Xiaoshan's chest heaved with anger as she glared at him. If it were not for Yun Yang sitting up there, Yun Xiaoshan would probably have gone over and punched him. In fact, Yun Yang had vaguely guessed it from seeing Hu Xiaofan's answer just now. This kid was very likely to be the first thorn in his side of the disciples. Now that he heard Hu Xiaofan's answer with his own ears, he could not help but confirm this. Hu Xiaofan said, so what if it's a matter of life and death? So what if it's child's play? I just think it's not a big deal. The martial world is the martial world, it's ha ha ha. Everything can be laughed off. When I'm alive, I enjoy drinking and eating meat. I kill, I cultivate, I become stronger. I try my best in every aspect. I don't let myself down, I don't let down the sect, and I don't let down Master's painstaking efforts. Isn't that enough? After I try my best and do my best, can't I laugh? Even when I'm about to die, I'll die even if I cry. It's better to go to the netherworld with a smile. If you live, you live. If you die, you die. If you live in this world, you should smile more when you can. If you are happy all the time, it might not be a joy in life. Could it be that you can achieve immortality in Jianghu? Yun Xiaoshan was so angry that she did not know what to say. Hu Xiaofan, there's something wrong with your way of thinking. You don't want to improve yourself, and you don't understand your heart. You're crazy. Hu Xiaofan still looked sloppy as he said with a chuckle, eldest senior sister, you were kidnapped when you were very young. Perhaps you only remember that you were miserable at that time, but you don't know how miserable you were. But I'm different. I'm completely different. Hu Xiaofan said, I'm 9 years old this year, the same age as you. But almost 2 years ago, when I was 7 years old, I was still with my parents. My parents were martial world people. They named me Xiaofan, hoping that I could be more ordinary and not roam the martial world anymore. That day, our family met with death. First, my parents were killed by the enemy right in front of me. My mother's head was sent flying, but her eyes were still looking at me. My father's legs were chopped off and his heart was pierced, but he was still crawling toward us. My elder brother's head was slapped so hard that it couldn't be found. My elder sister, who was already 13 years old at the time, was stripped naked. Then, she finally found a chance to commit suicide. And my 3-year-old brother was slapped into a pulp. Hu Xiaofan had an indifferent tone from beginning to end, and it seemed as if all of this was just something he spoke casually and had nothing to do with him. Chapter 1032. At that time, my parents had long stopped bothering themselves with the martial world. Our family made a living by farming. Although our days were hard, we enjoyed our family life and were happy every day. However, one day, a nightmare came. Everyone in the family died except for me. The reason I didn't die was because I knelt and kowtowed. I told them that I was obedient, that I was willing to cook and wash for them. I told them that I was afraid of death and that I wanted to live with all my might. In the end, they decided that I was a good-for-nothing. Seeing that I had 8 innately awakened chakras and had a decent aptitude, they brought me back to be sold. Then, I really began to cook and wash for them. I worked from morning to night without complaint for 3 whole months. Then, when they finally let their guard down, I poisoned them to death with a pot of soup. I avenged my parents' death and the blood debt of my family's annihilation. On the day of my revenge, I laughed so happily. It was a pity that I was caught by another group of human traffickers and not long after I escaped. Otherwise, I'd probably be a shop assistant now, or maybe I'd be living an ordinary but carefree life. Faced with another group of human traffickers, I humbly begged them again and continued to work diligently for them. I even helped them bully and teach the newly captured children. A few months later, I poisoned these 5 people to death with a pot of soup, and I even saved a group of young brothers. I took those 10 little brothers with me to beg everywhere. Actually, I still wanted to be a shop assistant, but if I left, what would happen to those little brothers? I smiled and endured it. I just wanted to wait until everyone was a few years older before we went our separate ways. I could still be a shop assistant, an ordinary person. But this begging life didn't last for more than a few days. In less than 10 days, I was targeted by another group of human traffickers and captured. This group of people didn't fall for my poisonous soup. They were killed by another group of human traffickers, and after they were done, I became the target of another group of human traffickers. In less than 2 years, I've gone through 5 waves of human traffickers. It's like reincarnation after reincarnation. I'm almost numb. I don't want to work as a shop assistant anymore and live an ordinary life. I've come to the residence of 9 Supremes. I am sincerely grateful to Master, and I like this environment from the bottom of my heart. However, the Jianghu is still the Jianghu. No matter how much I like it, no matter how grateful I am, I still can't change this reality. Once I encounter danger, when Master is not by my side, when I am about to be forcefully killed, I will still die. As the old saying goes, death is no big deal. But I've been close to death too many times. What's the big deal? Why can't I ha ha ha? I'm just like this. I think the Jianghu is just a joke to me. When I'm alive, I'll try my best to laugh and face everything happily. At the same time, I'll try my best to make myself stronger. I'll try my best not to die early. But when I'm about to die, when I'm about to be killed, I'll continue to laugh. Even when I'm about to die, I won't give the other party pleasure. Xiaofan laughed and said, "Think about the moment when I was about to die. Do you think the person who killed me would ask the same question as you asked today?" Why did he laugh? You're obviously about to die, so how can you still laugh so happily? This is all my understanding of the world of martial artists. The world of martial artists is ha ha ha. Xiaofan's eyes were full of coldness as he spoke. Eventually, tears fell from the corners of his eyes, but there was always a smile on his face and the corners of his mouth. The hearts of all the disciples were filled with shock. Yun Xiaoxin's mouth was agape as well, and she could not speak for a long time. Xiaofan said proudly, "So, this experience actually doesn't give me any special understanding. It's still the same, and it even proves many of my previous thoughts." Yun Yang, who had been silent up there, finally spoke. Xiaofan. Master. Xiaofan bowed respectfully to listen. Your understanding is not wrong. But I still want to tell you that the martial practitioners of the residence of 9 Supremes have an implicit standard, to protect. To protect your senior and junior sisters, senior and junior brothers, to protect your master and uncle masters, and to protect your sect. Including in the future, to protect your family and your children, just like your parents did in the past, to protect everything they cherished. Yun Yang paused for a moment and said, "I believe you understand." Xiaofan was silent for a moment before he said, "Yes, Master. I'll work hard to become stronger so that I won't be like my parents, watching everything I want to protect being slaughtered in front of me. So, I dare not slack off every day." Yun Yang nodded with relief. "It's good that you understand." "Yes, Master. From now on, I'll do my best to protect and become stronger as much as I can. However, if one day I'm unlucky and I'm not strong enough, I hope I can still go to hell laughing before I die," said Xiaofan. Yun Yang choked and waved his hand. "You've rested long enough. Go back to practice." It was not a good feeling to be choked by his own disciple. So what if you have a deep understanding? Do you know how to respect your master? Are you going to betray your master and destroy your ancestors? Subconsciously, Yun-yang had the urge to beat the boy up and teach him a lesson. No, you can't do this. You can't beat, scold, or punish him. I'm a kind master, I have to convince people with reason. At night, Yun-yang still caught Xiaofan and gave him a good beating. The boy thought the atmosphere was too dull, so he put a snake in each of his senior and junior sisters' blankets. Xiaofan became the common enemy of all his disciples from then on. Yun-yang heaved a long sigh. F***ck, why did I accept such a fellow as my disciple? When reasoning doesn't work, force does. The effect is just as good. However, Xiaofan's cultivation progress was impressive. Under the high-pressure catalysis of the residence of Nine Supreme's rich spiritual qi, his cultivation base had advanced to Jade Mystic Pinnacle in just 3 days. Together with Yun Xiaoxin and Cheng Jiejia, they had all broken through to Earth Mystic. That day, Yun Xiaoxin had just broken through in the morning, followed by Cheng Jiejia in the afternoon. Xiaofan had followed suit the next night. Yun-yang took a deep breath and finally decided to let go of this matter completely. He did not care anymore. He let go of everything, body and mind. In terms of aptitude and talent, Yun Xiaoxin was obviously much better than Xiaofan. Otherwise, how could she have caught Yun-yang's eye and become the principal disciple of the central peak? Moreover, Yun Xiaoxin's mind was strong enough, which could be seen from the sect tournament and the Battle of Jade Mystic Pinnacle. Even her diligence was above her peers, almost as if she was cultivating with her life on the line. Chapter 1033. In the face of such diligent disciples, what Yun-yang needed to consider was not to tire themselves out and hurt their foundations. He could not encourage them to cultivate diligently anymore. During this period of time, Yun Xiaoxin's position as the eldest senior sister had been solidified in a real sense. The way she showed her strong appeal was very simple. With one order, everyone had to work together to hold Xiaofan down and give him a good beating. This time, everyone attacked together. Even Cheng Jiejia, who had always been gentle, sneakily gave him a kick. From this, it could be seen how unpopular this fellow was, and how he was hated by the heavens and the people. Overall, however, the overall strength of Yun-yang's 9 peaks was growing at a terrifying rate. In fact, it was not only Yun-yang's peak. Even the other peaks' abilities had grown terrifyingly after returning from this training. For example, Bai Yexing of the 9 peaks had broken through to the realm of Heaven Mystic after returning this time. Lin Xiaoro had also broken through to the realm of Earth Mystic on the 3rd day after Yun Xiaoxin. Due to the successive breakthroughs of the disciples, the training facilities for the low-level Heaven Mystic, Earth Mystic, and Jade Mystic disciples that Qian Duo had set up previously were damaged to varying degrees, and the damage was getting worse. The day before, they were only slightly damaged and could still be used after some repairs, but on the 2nd day, they were all broken. Qian Duo came to Yun-yang to complain with a long face. "Boss, the current situation won't do. Even if we're rich and can afford it in a short period of time, looking at the brutality of these disciples, how much money will we need to fill this expenditure? Stop talking nonsense. Quickly replace them with new ones, stronger ones, those that they can't break or break." Probably because of the atmosphere of the Holy Land of cultivation and the individual's hard work, Yun Xiaoxin and Xiaofan were not the only ones who had achieved breakthroughs after the experience. Sun Mingxiu, the new top disciple among the top 10 disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes, whose cultivation base was relatively weak, had broken through to the level of Immortal Mystic on the 5th day after his return, becoming the first disciple of the residence of 9 Supremes to step into the ranks of high-level cultivators. His second disciple, Yu Chengheng, had also made considerable progress. He had reached the peak of the Sky Profound realm. All he needed was an opportunity to climb to a higher realm. In fact, almost every disciple of the residents of Nine Supremes was cultivating diligently and wholeheartedly. The qi of Tao, the qi of vitality, and even the primordial purple qi that flowed around the residents of Nine Supremes were changing the disciples' innate talents bit by bit in a subtle but real way, increasing the speed and progress of their cultivation at lightning speed. Every time his physique improved, his cultivation would rise by leaps and bounds. Every time a new aperture was opened, it would be accompanied by an earth-shattering change compared to the previous one, not to mention the infusion of the spirit power after the aperture was suddenly opened. This situation made Dong Qi feel as if his horizons had been widened. Should he choose disciples with poor aptitudes in the future? Then, he watched it get better step by step and leap by leaps and bounds. But in his memory, those so-called genius disciples with this and that physiques didn't seem to improve so quickly. This kind of ascension, which was like ascending to the heavens in a single step, had never happened before. What was going on? Speaking of Dong Qitian, there was something that had to be said. Dong Qitian's so-called return home this time was basically the same as what Yun Yang had guessed. His previous home was nowhere to be found. Even the small valley where they used to live had now become a small town. The world had truly changed. Things remained the same, but the people had changed. As for his family, they were long gone, not to mention the bloodline that was left behind. Even with Dong Qitian's temperament, he was still lost for a long time, as if he had lost something. Maybe they're still alive, but they've just moved to another place to live in seclusion, waiting for you. Yun Yang comforted him. Dong Qitian was silent. What he said sounded good, but he could only listen to it. He was just fooling himself. More than 4,000 years had passed. Who could still restore the truth of the past? What was the situation like? His cultivation base was strong enough to survive such a long time, but when he left home all those years ago, the rest of his family did not have the same cultivation base as him. After so many years, they might have already turned into a pile of dirt. 10 days later, the residents of Nine Supreme struck for the second time. This time, each of the demiurge flawed 10 only brought 2 disciples with them, while the rest stayed in the sect to cultivate. Their target was 10 human trafficking organizations. Wipe them out. Kill them all, leave no one alive. Bringing only 2 people with them could not only train the 2 disciples' combat abilities to the maximum, but they could also provide support at any time, ensuring that there were no mistakes. Such an arrangement was foolproof. At this time, there were still 5 months until the official Celestial Luck Banner contest. The atmosphere in the residence of Nine Supremes did not relax at all. Instead, it was getting tenser. In a few days, the residents of Nine Supremes would begin a new round of competition among the peaks. Moreover, the residents of Nine Supremes never forbade disciples from challenging each other even during this period of time. If one thought that his ability had surpassed the senior brother in front of him, he could challenge him. If he won, he would be the senior brother and enjoy the glory of victory. If he lost, he would be sorry, but this month's allowance and benefits would all go to the person he challenged. Almost everyone who was ranked at the top of the rankings felt insecure. Below them, there was a line of people challenging each other. The martial arena in the residence of Nine Supremes was being used almost all the time. Even Yun Xiaofan went to challenge Sun Mingxiu. I don't expect to defeat you now, but I still want to know how big the gap between us is. When she said this, Yun Xiaofan's cultivation base was at the intermediate level of Earth Mystic. The process of the challenge was very simple and short. In just 3 moves, Yun Xiaofan was defeated and handed over a month's allowance. However, on the 8th day after the challenge, Yun Xiaofan broke through again and advanced by leaps and bounds to the pinnacle of Earth Mystic. She was only 1 step away from the Heaven Mystic realm. There were many disciples who had the same idea as Yun Xiaofan. I don't want to defeat you, but I want to know the gap between us. This situation made Sun Mingxiu, the eldest senior brother of the residents of 9 Supremes, feel like he was a piece of fat meat facing a pack of hungry wolves. He wanted to howl, "If you want to know the gap, you can go to Yu Chengheng. Why did you come to me? Don't you know that I have to be very careful when I fight with you? I have to be merciful and strictly control the strength of my attack. It's very tiring, isn't it? I've been delayed so much by you that Yu Chengheng is about to catch up with me. It's a huge burden for an expert to be delayed by a group of mediocre people like you." Chapter 1034. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, the residents of 9 Supremes had sent out a mission once every 10 days. Including the first time, it had been sent out 4 times. 40 days had passed. There were still 3 months and 20 days before the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. However, the disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes were no longer satisfied with following behind their masters when they went out to carry out their missions. Gradually, they became the ones who took the lead, and many of them were rewarded. This was especially true for this group of little fellows. They were basically invincible when facing experts of the same level. His confidence was slowly being nurtured, and it was slowly starting to swell. Inside the sect, the atmosphere gradually became livelier. There were people communicating with each other every day. "Today I killed 2 people. What does it feel like? It's so scary. I still can't eat now. It feels so disgusting. It feels like someone is following me when I turn around. It's okay, it's okay. I'll just kill a few more. Yes." After 3 consecutive follow-up operations against the human traffickers, there were no more casualties among the 75 first-generation disciples of the 9 Peaks. Not only were there no casualties, each of the 75 disciples was much calmer than before. Even the youngest of them had a calm expression on their faces when they were fighting for their lives. Raising a knife to take a life and drawing a sword to kill was no longer a strange thing. Even the psychological barrier was gone. As these young fellows grew stronger, Yun Yang was shocked to realize that there were quite a number of amusing disciples. For example, Xiaofan was sparring with another disciple. The two stood facing each other. The wind was rustling. Xiaofan said, Xiaofan, was enlightened at the age of 3, started to practice martial arts at the age of 6, and innately opened 8 acupores. I killed 5 people at the age of 7, exterminated 3 sects at the age of 9, and achieved success in swordsmanship at the age of 10. The sword in my hand is made of refined steel. It is 2 feet 7 inches long and weighs 3 catties 9 tails. I, Mengiran, was enlightened at the age of 4, began to practice martial arts at the age of 7, wandered from place to place, killed at the age of 9, mastered the saber technique at the age of 10, and became a disciple of the 2nd peak of the residents of 9 Supremes. This saber is made of tempered divine steel, 2 feet and 5 inches long, weighing 5 catties and 4 tails. Although it's not a divine weapon, it's still a treasured saber. Good saber. Good sword. Please enlighten me. Please. Swish swish swish. Only then did the 2 of them engage in battle. Yun Yang no longer had the energy to retort. He really didn't know where these 2 fellows learned these messy tricks from. He clearly hadn't learned anything yet, but his ability to act pretentious was extremely high. He really did not need a teacher to teach him. In fact, he had already mastered it in one go, soaring straight to the pinnacle of perfection, to the point of being able to do as he pleased. Also, what did he mean by accomplished swordsmanship? What did it mean to be proficient in swordsmanship? Don't insult the 2 words accomplished and advanced with your mediocre saber techniques and sword moves. The other side. Yun Xiaoxin and Lin Xiaoro. Junior sister Lin. Senior sister Yun. Since the last time we parted, junior sister is still as graceful as before. After so many years, senior sister is still as beautiful as ever. Are you here to have a showdown? Senior sister, please enlighten me. I'm about to have a showdown. Same here. Please. Please. Hugging his sword, cupping his hands, he made his move. Swish swish swish, as Yun Yang watched the battles between the disciples, he felt as if thousands of mythical beasts were roaring and rampaging within him. After so many years? If I may ask, when have you not seen each other? What do you mean by, after so many years? A showdown. You two little girls, what showdown are you talking about? Elegant as ever, beautiful as ever, just two little girls, don't blaspheme elegance and beauty, okay? 2 tablets. The residents of 9 Supremes may not be as good as the other sects in other aspects, but when it comes to the level of showing off, it can really be said to be the best in the bound of universe. Moreover, it even occupies the top 3, top 5, and top 10 positions. I'm afraid it's not impossible for it to be invincible in the world. Yun Yang sighed. Just when did our sect style suddenly become so crooked? Why didn't I notice it? Why didn't I find any clues? Junior brother you. Senior brother Sunday, you've broken through. Senior brother has sharp eyes. Do you want to fight? No. I know I can't beat you, so it's pointless to waste my effort. I'll come back another day. Farewell, junior brother. Senior brother is too polite. Please. Please. These clowns. I wonder if they still know how to talk properly. Fortunately, Yun Yang soon found the source. He saw Shi Wuchen gliding down with an amazing movement technique, while Luo Dejiang walked over calmly, as steady as a mountain. Second brother. Third brother. Second brother has improved again. Third brother is the one who has improved a lot. Second brother is as elegant as ever. Third brother, then, both of them turned their heads and saw Yun Yang. Big brother. Big brother is as elegant as ever, big brother is so handsome. Yun Yang quickly turned around and covered his face, speeding all the way back to his hall. Holding his forehead, he heaved a long sigh and was speechless for a long time. F***ck. These drama queens. My residence of 9 Supremes has been turned into a concentration camp of clowns by these people? Yun Yang could not figure out the reason no matter how hard he racked his brains. When did it become like this? Why? It was all quite normal. He called Little Fatty over and asked. Little Fatty was dumbfounded and asked, "Isn't this what you suggested, boss?" Yun Yang was speechless. You suggested it after the last sect competition, saying that everyone is already a role model. No matter when and where in the future, we have to be methodical in our behavior and teaching. Little Fatty stared at Yun Yang strangely, incomprehension written all over his face. It was an expression that said, "You arranged it so well that you actually forgot about it. Everyone has done their best to achieve this. Why is it that you're the one who's impatient instead? How can we reason this out?" Yun Yang held his head and did not want to speak anymore. How can we reason this out? F***ck, I asked you to be role models, to be methodical in our behavior, not to be this kind of example. What kind of F***king example is this? Putting aside these troubling matters, there were still many things that made Yun Yang happy and gratified in these 40 days. For example, the improvement of the residents of 9 Supremes' younger generation disciples' abilities had reached a terrifying level. Yu Qingheng and Sun Mingxiu had stepped into the second level of Immortal Mystic one after the other in this month. Other than the top 2 positions that were unshakable and unchanging, the ranking of the other disciples among the top 10 disciples changed almost every 10 days. If they did not work hard, they might be caught up by the junior brothers and sisters behind them and be crushed to the ground. Once they were defeated, the senior brother would become the junior brother, and the senior sister would become the junior sister. It had to be said that the change in ranking was too exciting. Chapter 1035. Dong Qitian had once lamented that the disciples of the residents of Nine Supremes had been so relentless in their pursuit of perfection, yet none of them had lost their composure and suffered a qi deviation. This in itself was already unbelievable and illogical. It was amazing. He really did not know how they did it. Yunyang thought to himself, with the qi of Tao, the qi of vitality, and the occasional drop of primordial purple qi that Emi exudes from time to time, it improves the foundation of all the disciples in a way that is invisible to the naked eye. It has long solidified the disciples' foundation to a relatively high level. At least, before they step into the saint level, there will be no such thing as losing control of their state of mind and going mad. What surprised Yunyang more was that Kong Luoyue's top disciple, Bai Yexing, had changed his ranking twice during this period of time. The first time was when he won a battle and squeezed out the 9th place from the 10th place. However, in the next 10 days, he was defeated by someone else. 20 days later, he made a comeback and made a strong counterattack. He re-entered the top 10 and climbed to the 8th place in one spurt of energy. Until now, his ranking was still stable at the 8th place, and no one could shake him anymore. Yunyang's top disciple, Yun Xiaofan, first won the first place of Earth Mystic for the first 2 consecutive times. After the 3rd competition, she improved even more and soared to the 5th place of Heaven Mystic in one go, and after the most recent competition that had just ended, she charged all the way to the 2nd place of Heaven Mystic. The speed of her improvement was shocking. Lin Xiaoro, on the other hand, had fought her way to the 4th place of Heaven Mystic, and the one who ended Lin Xiaoro's pursuit of Yun Xiaofan was Hu Xiaofan. Although Hu Xiaofan was a thorn in the side and resentful of others, his improvement was not slow at all. Even with Yun Xiaofan's astonishing improvement, she did not really leave him behind. In fact, Hu Xiaofan's rapid improvement surprised even Yunyang. Among his disciples, this boy's aptitude was not the best, and his diligence was equal to everyone else's. At most, he had an outstanding temperament. According to Yunyang's evaluation and prediction of this boy, he should be far behind Qingjie. Why was it that this time, his progress was so shocking that he had left Qingjie far behind and was not weaker than Yun Xiaofan? Qingjie was only ranked 7th in Heaven Mystic this time. There must be a reason why Hu Xiaofan had unexpectedly surpassed her. Yunyang had even called the boy over for questioning to find out the reason. Opportunity? The second time I went out with Marshal Uncle Gua, this disciple was taking a dump in a forest. This disciple found a stalk of dark green grass under my feet, and there was even a fruit on it. This disciple smelled the fragrance, and since I was taking a dump, I grabbed it and ate it. Then, I felt myself passing out. Ahem, in the end, I had to wash my own clothes. After that, many people didn't talk to me anymore. They always said that I was smelly. I obviously bathed every day. If they despise me, I despise them too. I practice diligently. Anyway, my progress is much faster than theirs. I don't know if this is considered a fated chance. Regarding the breakthrough process that Hu Xiaofan had mentioned, even with Yunyang's supreme state of mind, he could feel that the process was F***ing interesting. How lazy are you, brat? How much experience do you have? This is too dirty, isn't it? When you were taking a dump, you discovered that a blade of grass had borne a fruit. It was still acceptable if you plucked it, but to eat it, this kind of operation was truly unparalleled. Such a special opportunity, it was hard to find even one in a million people, right? But what was it eating? After Hu Xiaofan had described the fruit's appearance in detail, Yunyang realized that he had no recollection of it, so he went to ask Dong Qitian. Dong Qitian was knowledgeable, as he quickly provided an answer. Could it be the spiritual root marrow-extracting fruit? Dong Qitian was shocked. You found it when you were taking a dump? Then, you plucked it and ate it? Dong Qitian pressed on, did you really take a dump while eating it? Dong Qitian was speechless when he got Yun Yang's confirmation. He suddenly retched. Blurg, this disciple of yours is a genius. Does this count as not wasting time? The result shocked Dong Qitian from head to toe. This brat's luck is really heaven-defying. Dong Qitian shook his head in disbelief. What kind of F*king luck is this? He had to squat beside the spiritual root marrow extracting fruit when he was taking a dump. Such good luck, go to heaven. Yun Yang was speechless. What the hell is this? The spiritual root marrow extracting fruit is a mystical species in the bound of universe. This fruit can only be grown underground, and it needs at least 1,000 years to germinate once. However, the germination is still completed underground, and it won't come out of the ground to be seen by people. It's only when it becomes a grass after another 3,000 years that it will appear in the world like an ordinary green plant. However, there's still no difference. Like ordinary green grass, it wilts and thrives with spring and autumn. Even the most brilliant spiritual botanist can't tell the difference. After another 1,000 years of wilting, this spiritual plant blooms once. The blooming period only lasts for a short 2 hours before the flower wilts. This is the only time in the 5,000 years since this fruit was born that it's different from ordinary green plants. After another 1,000 years of wilting and blooming, it can bear fruit. However, the entire process only takes a quarter of an hour from the moment it starts to ripen. The fruit falls when it's ripe, and the plant withers, waiting for the next cycle. Dong Qitian was speechless as he retched. Actually, there's only one effect of this fruit. It's to transform the bone marrow of the one who consumes it into the innate spiritual marrow. Cultivators like us use our bodies as mystical energy carriers and treasured rafts to cross the world. However, our bodies are constantly being tempered by the mundane world. No cultivation method or spiritual medicine can permanently remove the impurities from the outside to the inside. The spiritual marrow of the human body is the greatest foundation of a person. We've always talked about washing one's body, washing one's marrow, and being reborn. It's meant to strengthen the physical body and nourish one's own spiritual marrow, but how many people can really be reborn? Even if it happens once, it's already a great opportunity that's hard to replicate. But Xiaofan, that kid, has eaten the spiritual root marrow extracting fruit. His entire body will be filled with the innate spiritual marrow for the rest of his life, and he'll always be in a state where he's free of evil and impurities. It'll be strange if he doesn't improve quickly. Do you know why everyone hates his body odor? It's because the innate spiritual marrow is constantly expelling the impurities from his body. It'll be strange if he tastes better. Oh my God, what kind of fortune is this? Dong Qitian was utterly speechless. This fruit has only appeared in stories and legends since the beginning of time. I've never heard of anyone actually eating it. I can't believe this disciple of yours. What the F***ck? He's squatting right next to it while he's pooping. What kind of luck is this? I really want to beat him to death. Chapter 1036. Elder Dong did not hide his envy, jealousy, and hatred. F***ck, why didn't I come across such a good thing? If I could have the innate spiritual marrow, I'd be invincible in this world. Even if it's the Sacred Heart Palace, I can still destroy it. However, it was a waste to give it to a junior with such a shallow cultivation base. When I roamed the martial world in the past, I also fought with others for a stalk of spiritual herb. I couldn't get it even after I fought my brains out. This child is still wet behind the ears. I can't believe he ate such a good thing while taking a dump. That thing only appears for a quarter of an hour every 6,000 years. Dong Qitian looked up at the sky, his expression dark. He looked like he wanted to ask, "Oh heavens, what do you mean by this? Are you humiliating me?" Although Yun Yang knew that it was not the right time to laugh, he could not help but feel the urge to burst out laughing. How could an old ghost like Elder Dong, who had lived for thousands of years, show such resentment over this? Cough, cough. Yun Yang comforted him. Elder Dong, everyone has their own fate. It's just a little chance for your disciple. You have such a high status, why do you have to be so resentful? Resentment? What did you say? Resentment? How am I resentful? Dong Qitian glanced at Yun Yang and said faintly, you're right. Everyone has their own fate. This can't be forced. However, Yun Yang, I think you've advanced again compared to a while ago? You really have your own fate. Yun Yang nodded. Elder Dong's eyes are sharp. Dong Qitian sighed. You're advancing really fast. Cultivators above the saint level pay particular attention to personal qualities after they advance. They must train their state of mind and not leave any chance for their inner demons to peek at them. How about this, I'll suppress my cultivation base to the pinnacle of the third level of the saint level. Let's spar. I'll help you train and eliminate any future troubles. Yun Yang could vaguely feel that something was not right. However, what Dong Qitian said was the truth of cultivation. Every time he advanced, he had to polish and settle it. It would be even better if he had the help of a high-level cultivator. Yun Yang did not resent this at all. He only felt excited and eager to try. He said, then, I shall trouble Elder Dong. Then let's begin. A moment later, the hall sealed by Dong Qitian's divine sense was filled with Yun Yang's screams. An old monster that had lived for thousands of years was incomparable to an ordinary person in terms of experience, insight, and knowledge. Even if their cultivations were roughly the same, it was still obvious who was superior in actual combat. The so-called invincibility of the same level was still greatly limited and difficult to live up to. It was also because of this battle that Supreme Cloud did not show himself for 2 whole days. Even the daily work arrangements were conveyed through the 9 Supreme's dictum, adding a layer of mystery to the process. All the disciples, as well as Shi Wuchen and the rest, were astonished. Boss, Master, Head Venerate, what was going on? Seclusion? It didn't look like it. Could it be that he was creating a mysterious atmosphere and keeping a trump card for himself? The truth was that there were 3 bumps on Yun Yang's head, 3 neatly arranged bumps. 2 days had passed, and the bruises on his face had disappeared. However, the 3 bumps on his head had only gone down by half, even with Emmy's heaven-defying methods. When Yun Yang was beaten up earlier, he looked like he had 4 heads stacked on top of each other. It was terrifying. Although the 3 bumps were still visible now, they could still be covered up with his hair. Yun Yang looked at himself in the mirror and sighed deeply. Why? Because I am very resentful. Recalling this conversation, Yun Yang felt that he must have been out of his mind. He had just provoked a super expert whose bottom line he did not know until now, and he had already given up the opportunity. It was pure self-torture, a self-destructive move that had nothing to do with anyone else. Come to think of it, this period of time seemed to be the most peaceful period since he came to the bound of universe from the Tianxian continent. No one came looking for trouble, no one came looking for trouble. No one came looking for trouble, and no one came looking for trouble out of boredom. Even the people from the Commerce League had stopped bothering him. Even the raiders of all but heaven and earth, the black and white ruthless duo, seemed to have become a thing of the past. The wind was calm, and the waves were calm. It was not only the residence of 9 Supremes, but the entire martial world was peaceful as well. It was as if they had entered the great harmony world. It was not that they were at peace with the world, but that they were at peace with the entire world. The only movement was probably the residents of 9 Supremes going out to carry out missions every now and then to eliminate some human traffickers. However, this was even stranger. It had been a long time since the residents of 9 Supremes attacked the human traffickers. In Yun Yang's expectation, the higher-ups of the human traffickers should have come looking for trouble a long time ago, but reality did not match his expectations. There was no one or any force that came looking for trouble. This was a little too peaceful, was it not? There was a saying that something was amiss when something was out of the ordinary. Yun Yang was puzzled by the current peace, so he immediately sent Qian Duo out to gather information. According to the information Qian Duo brought back, the entire bound of universe seemed to be very quiet. Even the celestial luck banner organizations that had been active some time ago had shut themselves in, as if everything that happened in the outside world had nothing to do with them. Yun Yang acutely felt that something was amiss. Was this still the martial world when it was so peaceful? Even a nursing home would not be so peaceful, if it were not for the elimination of human traffickers every few days, which provided Yun Yang with a considerable amount of karmic aura. He would have long lost his composure. There must be some reason that he did not know about. There was no immediate concern, but there was a distant concern. In spite of this, the residence of Nine Supreme's comprehensive capability was in a state of rapid development. Yun Yang was reluctant to stop this state. What a great opportunity for development it was now. No one fought for it, no one fought for it. The human traffickers had accumulated a considerable number of good seedlings, not to mention that they could collect a lot of resources and a certain amount of karmic aura each time they moved out, as well as recruit many talented disciples. The only one who was doing this now was the residence of Nine Supremes. What could be more satisfying than monopolizing an oligopoly? In spite of this, what was the reason for the silence now? Ever since Yun Yang came from the Tianxian continent, he had adhered to the motto of being careful is the parent of a ship that sailed for 10,000 years. Every step he took was careful and cautious, always on guard. That was how he had managed to make it to where he was today. The unexpected quietness now stirred waves in Yun Yang's heart, making him unusually calm. If he did not figure this out, he might not even be able to sleep soundly. Chapter 1037. Compared to racking his brains and not being able to figure it out, it would be like returning empty-handed from a treasure trove if he did not ask an old demon who had lived for thousands of years. He had the thought of asking for advice, but he still felt uncomfortable. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't beat you, would I have tolerated you beating me up like this? I'll just take it as recycling waste. Yes, recycling waste and making the best use of everything. When the disciples who were practicing at the door finally saw their master come out, they were about to greet him when they realized that their master had left in a hurry with a solemn expression. All the disciples were dumbfounded, not daring to act rashly. After all, they were all smart children. Master doesn't look happy? Yes. I think so too. Senior sister Yun, look at Master's face. Is it? Yun Xiaofan rubbed her eyes and said uncertainly, is Master injured? But there didn't seem to be any fights these few days. Injured? Qing Jiejia asked anxiously, what's wrong with Master? Yun Xiaofan was about to say that she seemed to have seen 3 big bumps on her master's head. Before she could speak, however, a cough was heard and her master's stern voice rang out. Why aren't all of you practicing? Are all of you very free? The dozen or so disciples scattered immediately, keeping quiet out of fear. Maybe I'm mistaken. Yun Xiaofan thought to herself. With her master's immensely powerful cultivation base, he rarely had a worthy opponent. How could he be injured? Moreover, even if he was really injured, he must have gone through an earth-shattering and brutal battle. How could he have such a strange injury with bumps all over his head? Dong Qitian looked at Yun Yang with a strange expression when he heard the reason for his visit. Do you think this is abnormal? Let me tell you, this is the most normal state. The Celestial Luck Banner Tournament that happens once every 3 years. There are still about 3 months to go before the Celestial Luck Banner Tournament. Who would come out at such a crucial time? What if the sex experts met with other experts and got into an accident? Wouldn't that be damaging their own strength for no reason and giving the enemy an opportunity? What if something happens to the core disciples? What if, as the saying goes, everything that exists is reasonable? There are countless possibilities for a sect to be demoted, and there are also countless possibilities for a sect to fail to upgrade. There are also countless possibilities for a sect to not be demoted, or for a sect to upgrade, but become impossible. Sects that intend to participate in the Celestial Luck Banner battle will naturally try their best to prevent accidents from happening. Coping with all changes by remaining unchanged is the best method. When everyone adheres to this method, of course, the martial world will be peaceful. What's so strange about that? Dong Qitian snorted. Do you think everyone is like the residents of 9 Supremes? It's just been established, and you're already delusional enough to use a grassroots organization to topple an entire country? Let me tell you, they won't roam the Jianghu anymore. They won't even focus on cultivation. Even if they encounter an opportunity to break through, they won't dare to do so at this critical juncture. What if this breakthrough took too long and he missed the battle of 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 the Imperial Banners? What if there was an accident during this breakthrough, causing his strength to decline instead of advancing? Even if the breakthrough is successful, it will still result in serious consequences if the breakthrough is beyond the battle range. These are all things that need to be considered. Coping with all changes by remaining unchanged is the current consistent strategy of all sects and forces. Do you understand now? Yunyang nodded. I see. The truth is actually so obvious. As for you guys killing each other and snatching resources, do you think no one knows that you're the ones who did it? They're just letting you do whatever you want now. When they're free after the grading, they'll naturally have room to deal with you. With a grassroots organization like the residents of 9 Supremes, it'll be a piece of cake if they really want to deal with you. Dong Qitian snorted and said, just you wait. After the Celestial Luck Banner grading battle, your residents of 9 Supremes will definitely have countless visitors and challengers. It's the same whether you can get the Celestial Luck Banner in this battle or not. You're just a newly established sect, but you've already recruited 10,000 disciples. Are you trying to go to heaven or to turn the world upside down? I've long heard of a simple question from you. Those sects will come to you and ask to pick a few seedlings from here. Will you give them to them? If you don't, they'll beat them up. Who knows, the challenges you'll have to face in a day will be more than during the Celestial Luck Banner contest. They'll be crueler and more dangerous, and you might be overturned at any time. I'm really interested to see how far the residents of 9 Supremes can go. So there's a follow-up. I've been a frog in the well these days, and I've been too full of myself. Yunyang stroked his chin. In that case, the residents of 9 Supremes was actually riddled with hidden dangers and might even be in a precarious situation. That the residents of 9 Supremes is in a precarious situation is a matter for the future. Now, many sects should have started their journey to the venue of the Celestial Luck Banner contest, and some of them have even arrived. You should know that the terrain of the contest is also a key factor in determining the outcome, so why don't you explore it carefully? How to arrange the troops, how to strategize, all of these should be laid out early. Yet, you're still busy improving your ability. Although it's because of your lack of comprehensive ability, it's still. While Dong Qitian was talking about the continent, he actually felt mentally exhausted and felt that the future was bleak. To a veteran ace expert like Dong Qitian, encountering a strange sect leader like Yunyang and a strange sect like this was enough. According to Dong Qitian's judgment, the future of the residents of 9 Supremes was bright. As long as they kept a low profile for 3 years, it would not be too late to participate in the next Celestial Luck Banner contest and seize the opportunity to rise. Yet, this fellow wanted to settle everything in one go this time. He was King indifferent to life and death. Moreover, he did not seem to care about the Celestial Luck Banner contest at all. When do you plan to depart? Dong Qitian asked, rubbing the space between his brows. Yunyang hesitated. There are still 3 months and 8 days left. I've checked the route, and the journey from the residence of 9 Supremes to the venue will take less than 7 days. We don't have to travel at full speed, and we can reserve some rest time. So, I'm thinking if we can depart in the last 10 days? He smiled sheepishly. The disciple's abilities still need to be polished. An extra day of polishing is a day of benefit. It's good to be able to improve a little more. Dong Qitian heaved a long sigh. You're too kind, or perhaps too optimistic. The disciples of the 9 peaks don't need to improve at all, they need to make a huge leap. Sai, the highest is the 2nd level of immortal mystic. There's at least a gap of 2 levels if you want to fight the elite honor disciples. If it's an ordinary martial world person who hasn't joined a celestial luck banner sect, you might not even be able to complete 2 levels of cultivation in your lifetime. You're planning to complete it in 3 months. I really don't know if I should say that you're confident or delusional. Chapter 1038. Yunyang rubbed his nose. Isn't it because things have come to a head and there's no other way? Those old sects prepare in advance and depart in advance. Dong Qitian did not know what to say for a moment, so he complained weakly, do you think the battle of the Celestial Luck Banner is just going to the market for you? You just have to arrive on that day? The so-called battle of the Celestial Luck Banner is to fight when it's time and come back after it's over? So casually and effortlessly? Yunyang chuckled dryly. Where there's a will, there's a way. I have to try since it's come to this, sigh. Dong Qitian heaved a long sigh, exhaling an endless sorrow. Forget it, I'll just take it as I've met a lunatic. It's best for these disciples to take the Emerald Cloud Pill to improve their cultivation base. It'll be too late if we delay any longer. Elder Dong, can we start with the advanced Emerald Cloud Pill that you mentioned last time? Dong Qitian glanced at him and said, of course, refining the Emerald Cloud Pill is not a problem for me. But, have you prepared the medicinal ingredients? I've brought them. There's also the Bone Honing Pill, Meridian Expanding Pill, Marrow Cleansing Pill, True Energy Pill. If all the spiritual herbs are prepared and used together with the Emerald Cloud Pill, then the effect of a meteoric rise can be achieved. Are you sure you're ready? Yes, I am. This is the thing I've been planning the most during this period of time. Yunyang took out the resources with a grin. Dong Qitian rolled his eyes. This bastard, he's prepared? Why are you preparing so quickly? He had wanted to use these treasures to make things difficult for Yunyang, but looking at the neatly arranged piles of treasures, Dong Qitian was at a loss. I didn't expect this. So many heavenly treasures, where did this guy get them from so easily? Dong Qitian sighed, his expression suddenly turning solemn. There's one more thing that I have to tell you in advance. As our sect secret, the Azure Cloud Pill is consumed together with other supplementary medicinal pills. Although it can allow the user to achieve a meteoric rise in cultivation, and once it succeeds, it's sufficient to allow the disciples in your sect to advance by an entire realm in one go. However, the dangers within it are extremely great as well. The success rate is only 20%. What's more, this 20% chance of success can only be achieved if the sect's disciples are all outstanding geniuses. To be more precise, you promoted 75 disciples at once, which is a huge taboo. Among them, at least 50 of them will either die on the spot or have their meridians crippled and become crippled. This is already the best, the most conservative, and at the very least. Dong Qitian said solemnly, have you thought it through? Are we really going to do this? Yunyang said faintly, since you want to walk the path of defiance, you have to bear the price of defiance. As for the low success rate, I've already prepared for it. There's one person you don't have to worry about. He's definitely going to advance. Furthermore, there wouldn't be any danger. That was Xiaofan. To him, who possessed the innate spiritual marrow at all times and was constantly expelling the negative impurities from his body, no matter how many elixirs penetrated his body, it would not be a problem. However, other than him, everyone else was in great danger. Think again. I personally don't like your impatience. Dong Qitian felt mentally exhausted. This fellow Yun Yang, in the beginning, Dong Qitian had mentioned the emerald cloud pill to Yun Yang. At the time, Dong Qitian had thought, you're all trash here anyway. It's okay to kill some of them. It's enough if 2 or 3 out of 100 people can advance. However, as he got to know them during this period of time, Dong Qitian grew to like these children who had pitiful backgrounds but were determined. He could not bear to see them take the risk. That was why he wanted to use the excuse of treasured resources to delay the process. What was even more unexpected was that Yun Yang had already prepared everything. Yun Yang said decisively, we have already made the necessary preparations. There's no need to think anymore. It's either we succeed or we die. Compared to planning it slowly, we don't have the time, and I believe that man can conquer nature. Dong Qitian stared at Yun Yang for a long time before his expression turned cold. He slowly closed his eyes and said faintly, all right, go ahead. I'll need half a month to refine these pills. Yun Yang left. Dong Qitian opened his eyes and looked at Yun Yang's back with a somber expression. This is the third matter. Very well. Yun Yang did not turn around. Dong Qitian sucked in a deep breath and let out a long sigh. Child, why are you so heartless? You insist on trying when you know that 80% of your disciples will die? Do you not see them as human beings? Dong Qitian closed his eyes in pain. I don't think you're this kind of person. Could I have misjudged you? Could it be that the residence of 9 Supremes isn't a friendly place? Yun Yang returned to Supreme Cloud Peak. He was no longer as restless and doubtful as before. He was calm and composed. Danger? 20% chance. These concerns did not exist for the residents of 9 Supremes and Yun Yang. Since Xiaofan could ascend safely and smoothly, it meant that the success rate of consuming the Emerald Cloud Pill under certain conditions was 100%. As long as Emmy was around, it would not be inferior to Xiaofan's innate spiritual marrow. That's why none of my disciples will be in trouble. On this point, I am 100% sure. I believe that the worst and most regrettable outcome of ascending with the medicinal pill this time is that the ascension is unsuccessful and there is no improvement in his cultivation base. The situation where his meridians are crippled and his cultivation method is destroyed is still non-existent. Yun Yang knew what Dong Qitian was thinking, but the foundation of this matter was Yun Yang's biggest trump card. It could not be known to anyone other than himself, so he could only let the truth tell him. Time passed slowly. To the residents of 9 Supremes, it could be said that every day now passed too quickly. It was almost like a blink of an eye. To each of the disciples, however, it was too slow. Every moment of every day felt like a year. One day was like 3 autumns. Rest time? That did not exist. Whether it was the 9 peak masters or the disciples. Whether it was the disciples who had already joined or the ordinary disciples who had yet to officially join. Basically, every day, he would use his time in small chunks. When they were tired of sword practice, they practiced. When they were tired of saber practice, they practiced. When they were tired of martial arts, they practiced. Meditation and cultivation were the only things that had anything to do with rest. Every moment in the huge square was filled with the activity of dragons and tigers. The disciples were like little tigers, all of them growing at a rapid pace. The night was deep. The disciples were all immersed in the deep atmosphere of recuperation. The moonlight was like water while the surging spiritual qi was like the tide of the ocean, washing every corner of the residence of 9 Supremes again and again. Yun Yang quietly entered the disciples' rooms. A wisp of chi of vitality quietly turned into countless sparks of light and enveloped a dozen disciples. Then, someone went to the other peaks and repeated the same thing. It was almost dawn. Yun Yang stood at the top of a big tree at the highest point of the residence of 9 Supremes, his gaze deep as he looked into the distance. He mumbled, "Celestial luck, celestial luck." Chapter 1039. Early the next morning. In the first hour, Yun Xiaofan gathered the puzzles accumulated by her junior brothers and sisters from the previous day and asked Yun Yang for advice. Then, they dispersed to practice. When his spirit was at its peak, Yun Yang would explain the cultivation method on the spot. Each time, he would use the art of brilliance to strike directly at the disciple's soul, so that all the disciples who had listened to him once would remember it as long as they listened attentively. This was a great benefit that the disciples of the other peaks could not enjoy. In fact, this was also the fundamental reason why the disciples of the central peak advanced so quickly. This was because the disciples of the other peaks could only enjoy such treatment when Yun Yang gave a unified lecture after each competition. It was not that Yun Yang did not want to share the benefits equally, but he was powerless to do so. The art of goody was extremely taxing on an individual. It was fine if it was used in a small area, but if it was used on all the disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes, it could only be used occasionally. It was not something that Yun Yang could do at his current stage. If all the disciples were to take turns every day, Yun Yang would need at least half a day to recover his energy after the lecture. Besides, the disciples had their own masters, and Wuxia and the others also had their own secret teaching methods. They might not be inferior to Yun Yang's, and it would do more harm than good to force himself to do it. Another 7 or 8 days passed by in a flash. It was time for another round of the sect's disciple competition. This time, Yun Yang specially observed the performance of a few disciples. In addition to Sun Mingxiu, Yu Qingheng, Yun Xiaofan, Hu Xiaofan, Bai Yexing, Lin Xiaoro, Cheng Jiejia, and other key targets, there were a few others. Sun Mingxiu had broken through again. He had now advanced to the pinnacle of immortal mystic and could break through to the level of supreme at any time. Yu Qingheng had also climbed to the pinnacle of immortal mystic, and he was still not far behind Sun Mingxiu. Yun Xiaofan had successfully reached the pinnacle of immortal mystic and was only waiting for the opportunity to break through. Hu Xiaofan. When did this fellow also reach the pinnacle of immortal mystic? Is he on par with Yun Xiaofan now? Bai Yexing was in the beginner level of immortal mystic, Lin Xiaoro was in the intermediate level of heaven mystic, and Cheng Jiejia was in the intermediate level of heaven mystic. Among the first-generation disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes, there were less than 10 of them with the lowest cultivation base now, who were at the pinnacle of earth mystic. The others, without exception, had all reached the sky-profound realm. Therefore, when these disciples attacked, the entire residence of 9 Supremes looked like a blue ocean against the backdrop of their attacks. Yun Yang sat in the middle while the 8 peak masters lined up on his left and right. Ping Xiaoyi and Guanuanyang were seated separately. What was worth mentioning was that when the two of them saw that other people's disciples were outstanding, they also wanted to take them in as disciples. After the first operation against the human traffickers, they each went to find 10 disciples to train and teach, which could be considered as satisfying the addiction of being a teacher. However, their disciples were not allowed to participate in the grand competition of the 9 peaks. After a round of competition, Sun Mingxiu was still firmly in the position of the chief disciple, and Yu Qingheng was ranked second behind him. Bai Yexing, whom Yun Yang had high hopes for, charged straight to the top 3. Yun Yang frowned as well, looking at the dejected expressions of the other 7 disciples. These disciples had gone through such a long period of spiritual power cleansing. In terms of individual progress, they could be considered geniuses in other sections. However, the meridians in their bodies showed signs of solidification. It was a sign that even if their physiques changed in the future, they would be close to their limits and it would be difficult for them to make further progress in a short period of time. They would need a long period of training before they could make another breakthrough. There was no solution to this situation in a short period of time. They would have to wait until after the Celestial Luck Banner competition before they could come up with a countermeasure. Among the disciples, the few with the best aptitude were probably Yun Xiaofan, Bai Yexing, Lin Xiaoro, Cheng Jiejia, and now, Hu Xiaofan was added to the mix, especially Hu Xiaofan, who seemed to be catching up from behind and making a counterattack. There was no suspense in Tianxuan's battle. Yun Xiaofan took the top spot right away, taking first place. Hu Xiaofan, on the other hand, had truly opened the path of counterattack. He charged forward bravely and made his way to second place. Thinking that his cultivation base had caught up to his eldest senior sister, Hu Xiaofan naturally would not let go of the chance to challenge her, so he went into battle with pride. However, he was overpowered by Yun Xiaofan, who had sworn to maintain her peerless status, and was sent flying in less than 10 moves. Cheng Jiejia and Lin Xiaoro's cultivation base was still on par. The battle went on until both of them were exhausted. Only then did Cheng Jiejia win by a narrow margin, and they were ranked 3rd and 4th respectively. As expected, Lin Xiaoro cried again. Dong Qitian watched from the highest spot with a dark expression. Every time he saw these little fellows, Dong Qitian felt like he was looking at bamboo shoots after a heavy spring rain. They were rising up by leaps and bounds. The speed of their advancement was truly unstoppable. Even in the heyday of the Ultimate Heaven sect, the disciples of the sect did not advance so quickly. Shaking his head, Dong Qitian felt that it was too much of a pity. Why is this fellow Yun Yang so detestable? He's not content at all and even wants to make emerald cloud pills. What do you mean by success or death? Bullsh *T. You don't know how lucky you are. Staring at the last 7 of the top 10 disciples who were overpowered by Bai Yexing, Dong Qitian could clearly feel that Yun Yang was somewhat dissatisfied with their progress, especially with a slight frown on their physical condition. However, Dong Qitian only wanted to say, what else do you King want? Although the meridians of those disciples are showing signs of solidification, they're already innate physiques now. What else do you want? Do you know that I was only an innate physique back then? This child has seen too many treasures and is now nitpicking. Nevertheless, I must say that these disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes are really enviable now. Yun Yang, you've gotten yourself into big trouble. Many of your latecomers in the courtyard at the foot of the mountain have already formed innate physiques, and many of their chakras are gradually awakening. Due to the unique environment of the residents of 9 Supremes, the walls of these disciples' chakras have become very thin without exception. Even if a middle-class Celestial Luck Banner sect comes to pick disciples, at least 5,000 of your 10,000 disciples will be taken away. By then, how are you going to face the aggressive plunder of these jackals? I'd like to see how you get through this trouble. I won't help you anyway. Humph. Dong Qitian made up his mind inwardly. As the days went by, the atmosphere that enveloped the entire residence of 9 Supremes grew tenser and more depressing. Even Shi Wuchen, Luo Dajiang, and the others often came and went in a hurry with a somber look on their faces. Other than teaching his disciples, Yun Yang spent his time practicing his skills and qi or practicing his saber and sword, as if there was nothing else in his life. Perhaps, in the entire residence of 9 Supremes, Yun Yang was the only person who was not nervous. Chapter 1040. After Dong Qitian's explanation that day, Yun Yang was no longer nervous. He wore a warm smile on his lips all day long. This puzzled Dong Qitian a little. Shouldn't you be more nervous after what I've said? Why are you more relaxed instead? How magnanimous are you? Although his smile was pleasing to the eye when paired with his handsome face, he was too unsociable. It would be an understatement to say that he did not fit in. Lord Supreme Cloud was very attentive to teaching his disciples now. Then, he realized that although there were only a dozen or so people, there was a lot of work to be done. Yun Xiaofan came to snitch on him almost every day after he had given her power. Yun Yang's head started to ache every time he saw this girl poking her head out sneakily at the entrance of the hall, her little eyes darting around. Master, who's disobedient, master, who's not proactive in his cultivation, master, who's grabbing senior and junior sisters' braids and got into a fight. Yun Yang was already very regretful that he had given this little girl his power. How annoying. For example, now. Master, who Xiaofan beat Lu Changman up again today. Yun Xiaofan came in sneakily to complain. What's the reason this time? Yun Yang's absence of his smiling face these days was almost all because of this unconventional disciple. He subconsciously rubbed the space between his brows. It's the same reason. Lu Changman wore a tight outfit today and Hu Xiaofan complained that his shoes were made of animal skin instead of cloth shoes. He said that Lu Changman's hair and feet were uneven and looked awkward. Then, he started beating him up. Yun Xiaofan said, rolling her eyes. Yun Yang sighed. This Hu Xiaofan was a real prick. In the last 7 days, he had found all sorts of excuses to beat Lu Changman up 11 times. There was really no one else like him. Perhaps he complained that Lu Changman did not wash his face in the morning, or that his belt was slanted, or that his clothes were dirty, or that his hair was messy, or that he did not wear a hat, and many other reasons. The most impressive was last night when Lu Changman ate 10 steamed buns, one more than Hu Xiaofan. Hu Xiaofan flew into a rage and hollered, King hell. How dare you eat one more steamed bun than me? This is a blatant provocation. Without another word, he beat Lu Changman up again. There was naturally a reason why Hu Xiaofan targeted Lu Changman like this. The grudge between the two seemed to be quite big. After a rain, when Hu Xiaofan went to the toilet, Lu Changman threw a stone that weighed almost 50 kilograms into the manure pit. Naturally, Hu Xiaofan was once again praised and had a seductive aura, but that time, Lu Changman really did not do it on purpose. At that time, Lu Changman was sparring with Cheng Jiejia. Cheng Jiejia asked Lu Changman to throw rocks at her, and then she used her sword to block, stab, and turn back, to train her skills in dealing with long-range attacks. Lu Changman was an honest and straightforward person, so he naturally did his best to cooperate with his senior sister's instructions. At first, it was just small stones, and Cheng Jiejia easily dealt with them. Later, Cheng Jiejia increased the stakes. Just use big ones. Throw them a little higher and farther. Use all your strength. It's okay. Lu Changman, who was quite honest, really found a big stone and threw it with all his strength. This time, it was completely different from before. Lu Changman's cultivation was not ordinary, and his strength could be ranked in the top 3 among his seniors and juniors. When he used all his strength, the big stone vaguely showed the power of wind and thunder, and its power was terrifying. Although Cheng Jiejia's cultivation was higher than Lu Changman's, she was not much stronger. Her long sword was also not a heavy weapon. Facing such an attack that felt like a mountain pressing down on her, how could she take it head-on? While quickly dodging, she used the momentum to lift and push the big stone to another landing point. Then, the big stone smashed into the manure pit. It had just rained heavily, and the manure pit was almost flooded. Therefore, Hu Xiaofan, who was in the manure pit, let out a weird cry and jumped out with his pants up. He went crazy on the spot. Anyone would have gone crazy in the face of such a sudden and inexplicable disaster, let alone Hu Xiaofan, who liked to flirt when he had nothing better to do. Anyone with eyes and a little bit of foresight could see and think clearly about this matter. It was obvious that Lu Changman had committed a crime because of Cheng Jiejia, and he could not even be considered an accomplice. Even Hu Xiaofan himself knew it very well. Lu Changman had been set up. However, as a self-proclaimed hero, Hu Xiaofan disdained to stoop to the level of a woman like Cheng Jiejie. More importantly, Cheng Jiejie had Yun Xiuxin backing her up, and he really could not defeat her. Therefore, he naturally vented all his anger on Lu Changman. As a result, Lu Changman had been living a miserable life for the past 7 to 8 days. Although Lu Changman's reaction was slightly slower, he was unexpectedly a ghoul. He would rather die than bow his head, admit defeat, or apologize. I'm not wrong. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm not wrong even if you hit me. Hu Xiaofan held his anger and wanted to find a way out of this embarrassing situation, but he never got a response. He could only continue like this. Lu Changman was extremely indignant when he was beaten. Hu Xiaofan was furious when he could not get an explanation. The situation was getting worse. Both of them had spoken. In this life and in this life, we will not live under the same sky. Yun Yang rubbed the area between his brows, feeling mentally exhausted again. F***ck, what else can I say? Was Cheng Jiejie's mistake unintentional? Or was it intentional, with the intention of messing with Hu Xiaofan? Yun Yang looked at his eldest disciple. Yun Xiuxin stammered and stammered, her eyes evasive. Speak. Yun Yang slammed the table, his handsome face contorted in anger, causing Yun Xiuxin to shudder. Hearing Yun Yang's harsh shout, Yun Xiuxin's face turned pale. Her legs gave way and she fell to the floor, crying, "The last match. Hu Xiaofan defeated Jiejie, so, you've said this reason 7 to 8 times. Yun Yang snorted and looked at Yun Xiuxin from the corner of his eyes. What I'm asking you now is, what role did you play in this? If you didn't play any tricks, with Cheng Jiejie's usually docile personality, she wouldn't have done such a thing even if she was defeated. If you had nothing to do with it, why would you support Cheng Jiejie for no reason? If you don't tell me the truth. Master. Yun Xiuxin stammered for a long time before her toes touched the ground and she rubbed the corner of her clothes. Her face was flushed as she said, it's my idea, to get some medicine for Hu Xiaofan, look at the time, then I'll send a voice transmission to Cheng Jiejie, sigh. Yun Yang heaved a long sigh. Millions of divine beasts roared and galloped past Yun Yang's heart, leaving a trail of dust behind. Can't all of you let me save my breath? This disciple knows his mistake. I won't dare to do it again. Yun Xiuxin lowered her head, her eyes darting around. Hu Xiaofan is so ambitious that he actually covets my position as eldest senior sister. He deserves to die. Besides, this fellow's cultivation speed is too fast since he ate that fruit. He has seriously threatened my position as eldest senior sister. Chapter 1041. Yun Yang heaved another long sigh. Forget it, I'll go take a look. How could the master not step forward to clean up the mess caused by his disciple? When they arrived at the disciple's training field, they saw Lu Changman squatting in a corner with his hands behind his head. Hu Xiaofan's fists were like drumming drums. As he punched, he shouted, "Do you yield, 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 yield?" Lu Changman repeated, "Hu Xiaofan, you stupid pig, stinking dog, rat, maggot, cockroach, rotten mosquito. I yield, even if I die. Kill me now if you dare. When my cultivation base surpasses yours, I'll f***ck you 10,000 times a day. I'll f***ck you every day, all the time. I won't stop until I've f***k'd you up. Your father and I are mortal enemies in this lifetime." There was a rule in the residence of 9 supremes that disciples could argue, but no one was allowed to insult the other party's elders. Therefore, when disciples quarreled, words like stupid pig, stinking cow, rotten cow would fly everywhere. Stop. All of you, stop right now. Yun Yang's shout reverberated through the field. Hu Xiaofan stopped abruptly while Lu Changman lifted his head with a swollen face, his eyes still burning with anger and indignation. Yun Yang walked over with a snort and looked at the two men kneeling on the ground, trembling. I'm not in the mood now, nor am I obliged to care about what's going on between you two. Yun Yang said faintly, in the martial world, the strong are revered and the victor is king. This has always been the rule. In sects, it's the survival of the fittest as well. However, you can't go on without restraint. Hu Xiaofan. This disciple is here. You know the consequences if you continue to beat people up so recklessly. Yes, master. This disciple dares not. Lu Changman. This disciple is here. I'll give you a chance for revenge and a chance for Hu Xiaofan to beat you up again. After the next 10-day competition, both of you will have a chance for a fair battle. Yes. Lu Changman's eyes shone brightly. Don't you want to take revenge? You can. As long as you can defeat Hu Xiaofan, I'll be happy to see you defeat him. At the same time, if one day you surpass Hu Xiaofan and really defeat him, then after every grand competition, Hu Xiaofan will also have a chance to challenge you. In other words, the loser has an unlimited right to challenge, and the winner cannot refuse. However, apart from this specific period of time, the two of you are not allowed to fight in private. This disciple understands. I will solemnly reiterate this agreement. There is no time limit. We will fight until the one who is at a disadvantage doesn't want to fight anymore. Yes. Yes, I understand. Master is really wise, heroic, handsome, unrestrained, and perceptive. This disciple admires you very much. Yun Xiaoshin's flattery made Yun Yang's mouth twitch, and for a moment, he did not know what to do. With a snort, he patted the little girl's head and said, "Remember this, little girl. Just this once. Don't do it again. If you dare to cause trouble again, I'll abolish your title as the eldest senior sister. I'll let you be the youngest junior sister." Yun Xiaoshin was shocked. Master, no. This disciple won't dare to do it again. This disciple just sees that Hu Xiaofan has been too arrogant recently. Cough, cough. Yun Xiaoshin covered her mouth with her hands, her two braids swaying as she ran out in a panic. The usual steady demeanor of an eldest senior sister was nowhere to be seen. Then, a loud shout came from outside, "Hu Xiaofan, how dare you bully a fellow disciple? I'm going to teach you a lesson." What eldest senior sister? You're just a snitch. Do you think I'm really afraid of you? If I were the eldest senior brother, I would never snitch. Hu Xiaofan's voice rang out. Puff, 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 he began to punch. Yun Yang closed his eyes. Sigh, my disciples are either troublemakers or fans of official positions, and they're all a bunch of clowns. It's so tiring to be a master. But this Lu Changman, he's really tenacious. Yun Yang pondered for a moment and could not help coming up with a lazy idea. With a wave of his hand, the 5 whiteys landed on the ground and rolled around like 5 snow-white pom-poms. I'll entrust the task of supervising the disciples' cultivation to the 5 of you. Yun Yang thought for a moment and said, all of you, grow bigger. Otherwise, these little girls will be dazzled when they see you. If they want to play with you every day, it'll affect their cultivation progress. Roar. The 5 whiteys roared in unison, agreeing to his request. In the next moment, 4 huge snow-white creatures suddenly appeared in the hall. These 4 behemoths were no less than 100 feet long, and their heads were half the size of a house. Their long fangs gleamed as white as snow, their tongues were blood-red, and their eyes were ferocious. With every step he took, the ground would rumble loudly. Then, Yun Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry. There was also a little pom-poms on the ground that were trying to grow bigger. Lightning Cat. Whitey 5. No matter how much this creature changed, it could only be this big at most. Whitey 5 meowed, looking up at the 4 whiteys that had turned into huge behemoths in an instant. It was resentful. It seemed like it was not even as big as their fingernails right now. I can't live anymore. Meow, meow, meow. Looking at Whitey 5, who was rubbing itself against his legs and acting coquettishly with anticipation, Yun Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry. This is a matter of species and bloodline. You can only wait for the next time to find something good for you. Whitey 5 was still in a daze. I won't be able to catch up for now, for spiritual beasts had suddenly appeared in the residence of 9 Supremes. The incident caused a huge commotion within a short period of time. The main reason was that all the disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes had sensed the 4 spiritual beasts when they appeared in front of the hall. Spiritual beasts that are so huge and look so ferocious, they might be able to swallow a dozen of us in one gulp. How many levels are these supreme spiritual beasts? It's terrifying. In fact, it was not only the disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes. Even Yun Yang did not know what level these 4 whiteys were. He had no idea about the levels of the mystical beasts in the bound of universe. What he knew from Qian Duo was not even close to being an armchair strategist. However, Shi Wuchen and the others were different. They came over to take a look and were shocked upon closer inspection. There are actually 4 beast kings. As the 4 whiteys walked out, a gust of wind blew. Even Dong Qitian was shocked. For spiritual beasts of the same species that are close to the level of demon general, how rare. Dong Qitian clicked his tongue in wonder. What the F***ck? Since when did the residents of 9 Supremes have these? Where did they keep them in the past? The second question was, these 4 spiritual beasts are already close to the level of demon general, why haven't they transformed yet? Then came the third question. F***ck me, isn't this an eclipse panther? How can an eclipse panther transform into such a huge form? Eclipse panther is only a mystical beast, the highest level can only be 10th. But these 4, have they far surpassed their own limits? Chapter 1042. The 4 beast supervisors paced back and forth between all the peaks of the residence of 9 Supremes. The overflowing aura of a king from them made all the disciples shudder in fear. In the face of such pressure, all the disciples endured the pressure to cultivate, and the effect was even better than before. It's been 15 days. Dong Qitian passed a dozen jade bottles to Yun Yang expressionlessly. Use them carefully. I'll remind you one last time, the success rate of ascension with the Emerald Cloud Pill is at most 20%. The dangers involved. I hope you can think about this group of children. I know. Yun Yang accepted the bottles happily. Whether the residents of 9 Supremes could soar this time really depends on these bottles of pills. I've used up more than 3 million heaven and earth treasures worth upper-class spiritual jade pieces in one go. After carefully checking all the disciples' cultivation base, Yun Yang ordered. All disciples are to gather at the main peaks hall a day later at night. The cultivation base of the residence of 9 Supremes disciples had already reached heaven mystic and above, without exception. This was the perfect time for them to rapidly ascend. Emmy, get ready. Next, it's up to you to show off and create another miracle that belongs to the residence of 9 Supremes. Another day later, all the higher-ups of the residence of 9 Supremes gathered, including Dong Qitian who had always lived in seclusion. In fact, other than Yun Yang and the other higher-ups, not many disciples in the residence of 9 Supremes had seen Dong Qitian in person, even though they knew that there was a pinnacle expert in the sect. After all, Dong Qitian had the intention to leave the residence of 9 Supremes at any time after fulfilling the conditions, so he naturally did not have many karmic ties. To a top-notch cultivator like Dong Qitian, it was taboo to create karmic ties. No matter how much he admired the residence of 9 Supreme's junior disciples, he was still reluctant to hastily form ties with them. The reason why Old Man Dong had appeared in public for the first time today was mainly because he knew the true purpose of the residence of 9 Supreme's gathering this time. Consuming 5 types of medicinal pills, including the Emerald Cloud Pill, to elevate one's cultivation base, and with Dong Qitian, a knowledgeable old horse, in charge, he could naturally catch a glimpse of the disciples who had consumed the pills earlier and saved them earlier. Dong Qitian estimated that with his help, the 20% success rate that he had initially estimated could be increased by another 5%. The old man truly doted on these genius disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes, planning to save as many of them as he could. He had truly put in a lot of effort. Perhaps, Dong Qitian himself did not realize that he was paying more and more attention to the residence of 9 Supremes juniors and disciples. He was taking pity on them, which was a huge contradiction to his original intention of not wanting to take on the karmic ties. At the moment, the 75 second-generation disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes stood proudly behind their masters, ready for battle. At this time, all of them were guessing why the sect head venerate had gathered everyone. Could it be that something big had happened? Or, was it time to set off for the Celestial Luck Banner contest? A moment later, Yun Yang strolled out from the main peaks hall, wearing his usual amiable smile on his face. Top 10 disciples, come forward. Yes. The top 10 disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes flew up in unison and lined up below the steps. Yun Yang nodded inwardly when he saw them. It had only been a short time since he last saw them, but each of the 10 young fellows had improved a lot. The eldest disciple, Sun Mingxiu, had now climbed to first-grade intermediate supreme. It would not be an exaggeration to say that such a speed of improvement was unheard of. Shi Wuchen wore a smug look on his face. Watching his eldest disciple take the lead, the feeling was exhilarating. Although Yu Qingheng had just broken through to first-grade supreme, his realm had already stabilized. The cultivation of the other disciples was not ordinary either. Most of them were at the second or third stage of the Spirit Profound realm, and the last one was at the middle stage of the first stage of the Spirit Profound realm. Considering the cultivation time of these disciples, their cultivation speed was unbelievably fast. Dong Qitian still felt that the cultivation progress of the disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes was unparalleled in the bound of universe and the first in history. However, among the top 10 disciples, the one who surprised Yun Yang the most was Bai Yexing. This was because his current cultivation base had also reached the level of supreme. Although he had just broken through and had not yet stabilized, and was slightly weaker than Yu Qingheng, Yun Yang had a hunch that Yu Qingheng would most likely lose his second place in the next competition of the 9 peaks. Glancing sideways, Yun Yang saw that Luo Dejiang looked displeased, while Bai Yexing's master, Kong Luoyue, looked proud and high-spirited. If everything goes according to plan, he'll be able to break through to the superior supreme level in one go after consuming the 5 types of pills. Sun Mingxiu will be able to reach the superior supreme level, and he'll only be a step away from the venerable realm. As for the others, they will also have to be at the level above supreme, with some higher and some lower. The 10 of you, come with me. Yun Yang nodded and said, An. Shi Wuchen and the rest of you, come with me too. During the process of taking the medicinal pills to break through, Shi Wuchen and the others would definitely be needed to protect him. No matter how confident Yun Yang was in breaking through with the medicinal pills and with Emmy's protection, it was still extremely dangerous to have no one to protect him. No matter how talented Sun Mingxiu, Bai Yexing, and the others were, they had only embarked on the path of cultivation for a short period of time. It was fine if everything went smoothly now, but once they encountered an inexplicable danger, their ability to deal with it would inevitably be insufficient. In particular, these newbies had no experience in breaking through with the help of external forces, so they had no idea how to proceed. The guidance of the route could only be done by Shi Wuchen and the others, as no one else had this innate condition. However, Shi Wuchen, Luo Dejiang, and the others did not know about breaking through with the help of the medicinal power beforehand. When they entered and Yun Yang's words were spoken, everyone's faces were filled with shock. Compared to Dong Qitian, Shi Wuchen and the others did not mind their disciples taking medicinal pills that could elevate their cultivation base. After all, they had taken Dong Qitian's pills before, and each and every one of them had a huge improvement in their cultivation base without any side effects to speak of. What surprised them instead was the fact that medicinal pills were not used repeatedly, or that the effects would decrease sharply. Was there really any meaning in taking them a second time? Chapter 1043. Shi Wuchen and the others could not help but feel enlightened. So that's how it is. It's logical and reasonable. However, there's one thing I have to make clear. After this ascension, the external force of medicinal pills will be used up. No matter how good, spiritual, miraculous, sacred, or divine medicine we have, we can't take them anymore. At least for the next 10 years, everyone in the residence of 9 Supremes can't use medicinal pills to enhance their cultivation base. Everyone must be strict about this. It's not a precaution, it's an absolute prohibition. Everyone must do this 10-year buffer period. Everyone must completely eliminate the negative effects of using medicinal pills to enhance their cultivation base in these 10 years. Hurry! And if you really want to eliminate it completely, you can only cultivate and fight. Yun Yang's expression was solemn. Because of this, don't chew on heaven and earth treasures in the future. Don't eat them carelessly. If your meridians can't handle it and get damaged, it'll be a great regret and your cultivation journey will be difficult. You must return to the sect or consult your seniors before you can use it carefully. Yes, the 10 disciples answered in unison. At this moment, all of the top 10 disciples were excited. The Emerald Cloud Pill. As the name suggested, the true meaning behind the Emerald Cloud Pill must be to ascend to the heavens in a single bound. What was the progress of crossing a whole realm at once if it wasn't a meteoric rise to the heavens in a single bound? The 10 of you, each take a quiet room later. Meditate and adjust your internal breath. Try to be as quiet as you can, physically and mentally. The 10 of you, take the medicinal pills in order, then use your own mystical chi to catalyze and guide the medicinal force to unleash. Guide and protect them. No matter what happens in the process, don't stop. Remember, it's any problem. This is the most important, the biggest key. Understood. Shi Wuchen and the others answered in unison. Their faces were as radiant as their disciples, their eyes filled with excitement. Just then, Dong Qitian's voice rang in Yun Yang's ears. Leader Yun, this old man advises you again, to consider it carefully. Even if you have to take it, do it one by one. Don't do it all at once. I'll be the one to guide them. The meaning behind Dong Qitian's words was clear, and he was once again showing his kindness. The risk of this matter was too high. Even if they didn't say it out loud, it was more or less the same. If they did it one by one, even if something serious happened, they would only lose one person. The others would have a choice. And if 10 of them were to attack together, it was extremely likely that all 10 of them would die from their meridians exploding. At that time, it would be a loss of 10 people. The most elite disciple. How could this not make one's heart ache to death? What was more, Dong Qitian had even offered to help guide the medicine's effect. It was a gesture of extreme kindness. Even if Shi Wuchen and the others were the masters of Sun Mingxiu and the others, their actual cultivation base, insight, and experience were far inferior to Dong Qitian's. With Dong Qitian's help, there was no doubt that the success rate would increase significantly. Moreover, with Dong Qitian's familiarity with the Emerald Cloud Pill's effects, he would be able to save them at once if anything were to go wrong. However, Yun Yang did not even think about it and said, there's no need to go through so much trouble. It's fine as it is. It's just a medicine, no need to trouble Elder Dong. Dong Qitian was so angry that he flung his sleeves and walked out, yelling angrily, "Bastard! Cold-blooded thing! Let's see how you're going to clean up the mess when there's trouble later." Yunyang chuckled and said, "Let's begin." Ren Qingquang frowned and said, "Lead Supreme, the Emerald Cloud Pill's effect is so strong. Will there be any danger if we consume it together with the other 4 supplementary medicines? Do we need to prepare for it?" Yunyang's eyes were half-lidded as he said faintly, "The path of cultivation has always been bumpy and difficult. What method of improvement is completely risk-free? The path of martial arts has always been to work hard in the midst of danger. How can we talk about cutting through the thorns and reaching the path of cultivation if we're afraid of the slightest thing?" The Demiurge Flawed 10 seemed to be deep in thought while the top 10 disciples felt their blood boiling with excitement from their leader's words. Sect leader Martial Uncle is right. On the path of martial arts, one should work hard to advance through dangers. How can it be possible to obtain powerful abilities without going through danger? This disciple is willing to take on any risk to hone his skills. Sun Mingxiu looked determined while the other disciples looked fanatical as well. Lan Ruojuan pursed his lips quietly. "A bunch of children who've been fooled. Let's begin." Yunyang sucked in a deep breath. The battle of the celestial luck banners is about to begin. Our success or failure in this battle depends on this day. If you succeed in your advancement this time, we'll still have the strength to fight. If not, then we'll have to wait for 3 years. During these 3 years, the spiritual energy of those sects with celestial luck banners is denser than ours, to begin with. This is also a chance for all of you to change your destiny. Work hard, children. The 10 children followed the Demiurge Flawed 10 into the meditation room, their faces solemn and solemn. Dong Qitian, who had gone outside in a huff, heaved a long sigh. Waves of mystical qi, mixed with various auras, spread in the main peak's hall in an instant, increasing without diminishing. Shi Wuchen and the others dared not slack off at all. Each of them gave it their all as they observed their disciples' condition in silence. These young fellows had just begun their cultivation journey. How could they not know what this breakthrough represented and how dangerous it would be? However, they knew it. This was a leap across a whole realm in one go. This was truly a meteoric rise to the heavens in a single bound. Since it was said to be a meteoric rise, how could there not be danger? This was definitely a test with a slim chance of survival. Shi Wuchen and the others were well aware of the dangers their disciples had to bear in this breakthrough. The anxiety in their hearts gradually reached its peak. At this moment, Shi Wuchen's heart of the sword was trembling. One must know that Shi Wuchen cultivated the heartless heart of the sword, the cold heart of the sword. Yet, he could not help but tremble in the face of his disciples, whom he had poured his blood, sweat, and tears into. How many of you can make it through in the end? This time, how many will have their cultivation journey cut short and fall overnight because of this breakthrough? Perhaps it was because they knew the significance of this breakthrough, but the top 10 disciples quickly entered a meditative state, using their mystical qi to adjust their condition to ensure that they were in good condition and could handle any changes within their abilities. In just a moment, the top 10 disciples were surrounded by white mist that slowly rose, forming a thick mass above each of their heads. Yunyang sat in the sect leader's seat, looking indifferent. In fact, the power of his spiritual and deific consciousness had long enveloped the entire hall. Every detail was within his grasp, closely observing each disciple's cultivation condition. Even the slightest detail was not missed. Chapter 1044. The Demiurge Flawed 10 took out a bone-honing pill from the bottle and fed it to the disciples. There was almost no reaction when the first pill entered their mouths. Each disciple only trembled slightly. With their current cultivation base, the bone-honing pill's medicinal effect was easily bearable. It was not a test at all. The only reaction he had was probably the slight sound that his bones had made when he sensed it. It was also at this moment that Yun Yang's calm voice rang out for the second time. The Emerald Cloud Path, the second step. The Meridian Expanding Pill. As they swallowed the pill, a few of them had painful expressions on their faces. However, that was all. As the effects of the medicine gradually spread, those with strange expressions quickly recovered their calmness. As for Sun Mingxiu and the others with higher cultivation bases, they still had calm expressions on their faces as they passed this stage smoothly. Shi Wuchen and the others who were sitting cross-legged behind the disciples did not move at all. To Shi Wuchen and the others, the first 4 steps required the disciples to handle it alone and get through it, no matter how painful it was. What they wanted was the last step, the end of the entire process. Intervening too early would only cause the opposite effect. Yun Yang's eyelids trembled. The disciples' meridians were now absorbing the medicinal effect of the meridian expanding pill, entering the process of completely melting the medicinal effect into every meridian in their bodies bit by bit. With Yun Yang's unique deific consciousness, he could sense that the copious medicinal effect gradually attached itself to each disciple's meridians. The walls of the meridians began to thicken and expand. Gradually, the bone-honing pill and the meridian expanding pill's effects overlapped, causing the disciples' meridians to expand to twice their original size. Everyone's faces were flushed red as veins surfaced on the surface of their skin, revealing a light green hue. This situation was, of course, a good sign. Cultivators all wished for their meridians to be as wide as possible. The wider the meridians, the easier it would be for them to channel mystical qi. At the same time, it could also neutralize the external mystical qi that had invaded their bodies. However, the disciples' meridians were currently being expanded by the external medicinal effect. Not only was it unstable, it was also extremely fragile. At the same time, Shi Wuchen and the others' reminders rang out, guard your spirit and qi. Within one breath, your qi cannot leak. Circulate your mystical qi 99 times to stabilize your meridians. The 10 disciples responded and silently circulated their xian qi in their bodies through the expanded meridians. Some of the meridians suddenly became wider, and the speed at which their xian qi circulated increased by several times. For a moment, the disciples felt that they were not used to it. However, this kind of discomfort gradually improved after he circulated his xian qi for 99 cycles. Finally, he was able to circulate it as he pleased. At the same time, as his meridians expanded, the power of his qi and blood became denser and denser. As for the white mist above the heads of the disciples, as it continued to gather, an illusory figure that resembled a flower bud slowly appeared. Azure Cloud Road, the third step. Marrow Cleansing Pill. When the marrow cleansing pill was swallowed, all the disciples reacted. Sun Mingxiu, who was the first to absorb the medicinal power, was the first to show signs of trouble. Black, oily stains gradually appeared all over his body. After a while, he spat out a mouthful of purplish-black blood, which reeked of blood. Yu Qingheng had a similar situation, and so did Bai Yexing, whose condition was similar to Yu Qingheng's. After that, it was the other disciples' turn. Without exception, they all expelled a lot of impurities from their bodies. For a moment, the hall was filled with a foul smell. The stench was unbearable, and it made people want to vomit. But no one frowned. This was an inevitable step. This process was to expel all the impurities in one's body, including the flesh, blood, bones, marrow, and qi, with the superimposed medicinal power of the first 3 pills. Their current bodies were in the cleanest and purest state. Correspondingly, the things that were expelled by the disciples were, of course, the dirtiest and dirtiest. A quarter of an hour later. Azure Cloud Road, the 4th step. True Essence Pill. This pill was actually the one he had eaten last time. Each pill could increase one's cultivation base by 100 years. None of the top 10 disciples showed any reaction. Among them, the slowest one took only an hour to finish absorbing it, and his aura became stable again. At this moment, in the thick fog above each disciple's head, there was a slender flower bud that was fully formed and visible to the naked eye. It was a marvelous sight to behold. 10 breaths of time passed in silence. Yun Yang's voice sounded indifferent and calm once more. Wuchen, the few of you, start to channel your mystical qi now and merge it with the disciples' mystical qi. Don't act rashly for now, maintain the status quo, and ensure that the mystical qi in the disciples' bodies remain stable. Sure, Wuchen and the others dared not delay and did as he was told. Azure Cloud Road, the 5th step straight to Azure Cloud. Azure Cloud Pill. The last pill was finally delivered into the disciples' mouths. Although Dong Qitian left the hall in a huff, he did not go far. He stood outside quietly, paying close attention to the turbulence of qi and blood in the main peak's hall, as well as the powerful aura that spread everywhere. Suddenly, a powerful force of qi and blood shot up into the sky, rushing out of the upper level of the main peak's hall and continuing to soar into the air. It has begun. Dong Qitian closed his eyes slowly and sighed softly. Really, I'm being stubborn. The sudden eruption of mystical qi mixed with the force of qi and blood meant that the Azure Cloud Pill had taken effect, and there was no turning back. Following the eruption of mystical qi and the force of qi and blood, the subsequent actions came one after another. Mental strength, eruption. Deific consciousness, eruption. Soul power, eruption. Since it was a step straight to Azure Cloud and crossing a realm in one go, it was naturally not limited to the improvement of mystical qi cultivation base. It was a comprehensive upgrade for a cultivator. How could an increase in mystical qi cultivation base be considered a step straight to heaven? This is just the beginning. Dong Qitian's eyes were filled with deep worry and a faint sense of sadness. Yun Yang, you'll regret this. Sun Mingxiu sat with his legs crossed, feeling that every part of his body was peaceful and peaceful. An indescribable sense of power surged quietly, about to burst forth. It was during this delicate moment that a medicinal pill slipped into his mouth. He knew that this was the Azure Cloud Pill. It was also the last and crucial step of using external forces to enhance one's cultivation base. Perhaps the negative feelings that the previous 4 medicinal pills had given him were too weak, causing him to be slightly careless. However, this Azure Cloud Pill melted in his mouth like the previous ones, but the feeling that followed was completely different. The moment the pill entered his mouth, it melted into a sweet liquid. However, at this moment, the sweet liquid immediately melted into an extremely ferocious and enormous medicinal power. It felt as if a burning red piece of charcoal was thrown into a ball of ice and snow. It rushed all the way down his throat. Chapter 1045. Not to mention breathing, even his thoughts seemed to explode at this moment. It was difficult to suppress, let alone calm down. This medicinal power was extremely overbearing. Although Sun Mingxiu was astonished by the terrifying medicinal power of the clear sky pill, his mind was not in the slightest bit disturbed. He clearly understood that if he allowed the medicinal power to rush through his body, his internal organs would probably turn into charcoal in an instant. He had the intention to move and react immediately, but this medicinal strength was too terrifying, and it had actually greatly exceeded the limits of what he could bear. The profound energy that he had mobilized with all his might was only able to hold on for a moment before it collapsed, unable to withstand a single blow. The horrified Sun Mingxiu had almost accepted his fate. At the moment when he was certain that he was about to be completely destroyed by this terrifying medicinal power, a dense force suddenly moved and forcibly resisted the copious medicinal power. Master. It was his master's qi that was as sharp as sword qi. It was no longer lying dormant in his meridians like before. It quickly blocked the copious medicinal power and extinguished its sharpness. Instead, it turned and guided the still violent airflow into his dantian at a relatively stable speed. Then, it flowed against the flow from his dantian and rushed toward a meridian that he had never opened before. All along, his master's expression had always been cold, looking like an unchanging sword mountain. He rarely showed any warmth to anyone, as if he himself was a sword, heartless, cold-blooded, and cold-hearted. His fellow disciples had always been more afraid of his master than they were respectful. But at this moment, Sun Mingxiu clearly felt the care and concern from his master. It was a kind of heart that would do his best to help his disciple, even at the cost of his own life. This feeling was so obvious, so clear. Sun Mingxiu's body suddenly trembled, and 2 drops of tears quietly seeped out of his eyes. His master's stern and cold voice sounded in his ears. "What nonsense are you thinking about? Hurry up and catch up with my Xian Qi. Do you expect me to help you for the rest of your life?" "Yes." Sun Mingxiu's heart choked with sobs as he agreed. He did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. Instead, he began to go all out, activating his Xian Qi to deal with the copious medicinal power. This was a critical juncture. His master was gambling with himself to help him get through this. If he could not get through, his master would inevitably suffer a serious injury. He could not be distracted. He could not afford to fail. Whether it was for himself or for his master, he could not fail. He had to succeed. The airflow produced by the superposition of the 5 elixirs flowed upwards from the dantian. Along the way, it constantly encountered resistance from the meridians. Those meridians that were blocked and had yet to have profound qi flow through, formed a dam of obstacles. However, before this frenzied force, it was as if it couldn't withstand a single blow, and its momentum didn't slow down in the slightest after successively charging through 7 or 8 passes. Apart from the circulation of profound energy, there were also broken meridians at all the places where he broke through. It was a scene of desolation. The flow of medicinal energy continued to follow the predetermined path, continuing to advance. After all, it was an external force, so it only had the inertia of rushing forward. At most, it would yield to an even more tyrannical force and change its direction. It was impossible for it to have any healing effect on the damaged meridians. This was one of the major drawbacks of consuming the 5 elixirs, including the Emerald Cloud Pill. The 20% success rate that Dong Qitian had mentioned earlier was a relatively large part of it. The moment the last Emerald Cloud Pill was consumed, the 5 elixirs took effect immediately, converging into an unstoppable flow of medicinal energy. If the user was careless, his meridians would explode due to being unable to bear the burden, and mystical qi would backfire, resulting in instant failure. In fact, Sun Mingxiu had almost fallen into this critical juncture of instant failure just now. However, Shi Wuchen's timely intervention had extinguished the sharp edge of the medicinal energy flow and guided it into Sun Mingxiu's body, allowing him to overcome this critical juncture. However, this critical juncture was only the most difficult one because the subsequent impact of the medicinal energy flow on the blocked meridians was the true critical juncture. Failure was imminent. Under normal circumstances, even if the user had the assistance of a master to guide the flow of medicinal energy, the damage to the meridians after the flow of medicinal energy could not be ignored. The meridians must be recuperated as soon as possible. Otherwise, the flow of one's own mystical qi could cause a second layer of damage to these meridians. It was extremely dangerous. However, the user's cultivation base was bound to be limited. How could he swiftly heal the damaged meridians? This was an impractical problem. The reason Dong Qitian was so fond of Hu Xiaofan and said that he could safely overcome this crisis was because the innate spiritual marrow that filled Hu Xiaofan's body could rapidly heal itself during this process. The problem of not being able to heal the meridians was almost non-existent to him. Currently, Sun Mingxiu was caught in this critical juncture. He was also trying his best to repair his meridians, but the results were minimal. He could even foresee that his meridians would not be able to continue and would be completely destroyed in the near future. Completely destroyed meant that his cultivation base would be crippled, and he might even explode to his death. Sun Mingxiu was not the only one in such a situation. All the top 10 disciples were in the same predicament. The Demiurge Flawed 10 who were guarding by the side were naturally aware of this situation, but their mystical qi was used to guide the flow of medicinal energy flow. It was rare for them to be distracted. Moreover, although their mystical qi cultivation base was dense, it was not limited to healing. Even if they could divert their attention to help, it was still an external force. It was not even enough to heal the disciples' meridians. Just when everyone was at a loss for what to do, a powerful force entered the disciples' bodies in a nourishing manner, quietly repairing the meridians that were broken by the forceful breakthrough. While the broken meridians were gradually being repaired, they were also taking shape bit by bit, forming a brand new meridian channel that was more powerful. What was going on? The moment the Demiurge Flawed 10 and the others came into contact with the flow of medicinal power, they realized how dangerous it was for the medicinal power to break through. With such an external force forcefully breaking through the meridians, the originally unobstructed meridians might be able to keep going, but the meridians that had yet to be opened and had yet to receive the baptism of mystical qi would only shatter. Even if they managed to break through the blocked meridians, what was the point? Apart from the fact that the meridians could not be used at all, the meridians would be severely damaged and the cultivation base would be greatly damaged. What should they do? The situation had completely exceeded the capabilities of the Demiurge Flawed 10 and the other disciples. They were anxious but helpless, unable to do anything about it. Fortunately, they remembered what Yun Yang had said in time. They were not allowed to stop no matter what and had to persevere until the end. Out of their confidence in Yun Yang, the disciples hardened their hearts and continued to guide the medicinal energy flow all the way. Then, they were pleasantly surprised to find that their disciples' broken meridians were actually being repaired at an extremely fast speed and were even being reshaped. The current crisis was no longer a crisis. Chapter 1046. The 10 of them were puzzled, but they did not dare to stop guiding their qi. At this point, the powerful medicinal energy had broken through more than half of the barriers in their meridians, but its momentum did not seem to be weakening. It continued to rush forward. It was like a raging dragon, shaking its head and wagging its tail, destroying everything that dared to stand in its way. One barrier, and another barrier, as the medicinal energy flowed forward like a hot knife through butter, even the bridge between heaven and earth was connected in an instant. Supreme. The top 10 disciples had all broken through the barrier of Supreme, and their cultivation and skills had increased exponentially. The position of Supreme could be said to be a watershed in the path of cultivation. There was once a senior who said this. The so-called Supreme did not mean that one was invincible. Because this so-called Supreme belonged to the human world, and had nothing to do with the heavens. The so-called Supreme was just a title. The dust in the sky was the Supreme in the mortal world. The true meaning of this sentence was that the dust in the eyes of those truly powerful people was enough to become a Supreme in the mortal world. However, it had to be said that as long as one reached this level, he would be considered to have stepped on the beginning of the path of martial arts to heaven. Because, how would one know what was above the Supreme without reaching the Supreme? It was like climbing a mountain. If one did not climb the mountain, how would one know that there were higher and more dangerous peaks, seas of clouds, and sky? Thanks to this fortuitous encounter, the supremacy level of the disciples quietly passed. Following the disciples' breakthroughs in their cultivation, the mystical energy in their bodies surged rapidly in their meridians. The newly increased mystical energy merged with the flow of medicinal energy, becoming more abundant and unstoppable. Early stage Supreme Martial Artist, Middle Stage, High Stage, Perfection Stage, Peak Stage. All of the energy and power in their bodies surged and surged towards a meridian so powerful that it was almost unshakable. Those who took the Emerald Cloud pill and the other 5 medicines would face 3 difficulties after taking the medicine. The first was the emergence of the medicinal energy flow, which the user could not adapt to. However, as long as there was an expert beside him to protect him, he could easily overcome it. Second, the meridians would be damaged in the process of breaking through with the help of the medicinal energy flow. This state was the most difficult to deal with. Unless the user had a self-healing method, or the protector had a special method to help, it would be extremely difficult to overcome. As for the third hurdle, it was probably the final barrier of the user's current cultivation path. Those who could pass through it would naturally have a smooth path, but those who couldn't would inevitably die prematurely. Shi Wuchen and the rest of the Demiurge Flawed 10 naturally understood the crux of the matter. They knew that it was time for them to truly compete, so they mustered 80% of their mystical qi and mixed it with the spiritual qi to force their way through. The surging profound energy rushed unstoppably towards the sturdy barrier of the meridians. Boom! It was clearly just a collision between the meridians and barely caused the slightest sound, but whether it was the people involved or the Demiurge Flawed 10, they instinctively felt a deafening roar. Sun Mingxiu was the first among the disciples to break through. The moment he broke through, he felt as if the entire world had exploded in his mind. His soul seemed to have floated up to the clouds of the 9th heaven. He was at a loss and had nowhere to rely on. Naturally, he didn't know that his body was trembling violently, and thin threads of blood were spurting out of his 7 apertures. A moment later, blood spurted out from every pore of his body. For a moment it was as if a drizzle of blood had poured down, dyeing the area 30 feet in front of him crimson. In spite of this, the powerful barrier that belonged to Sun Mingxiu had been shattered a moment ago. It was open. The supreme supremacy level was open. Breakthrough. In a short 15 minutes, the top 10 first-generation disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes, led by Sun Mingxiu, had all successfully broken through and advanced to the supreme supremacy level. The immense spiritual energy that was produced once again flowed into the flow of medicinal strength and the previous spiritual qi, adding vitality to the surging spiritual qi. In spite of this, the energy was obviously much weaker than before. Breaking through the barrier of the supreme supremacy level earlier had consumed too much energy. However, this was also a good thing. The sharp destruction energy was much easier to control than before. The hearts of Shi Wuchen and the rest calmed down at once. They controlled the weakening and withering spiritual qi and circulated it in their disciples' meridians at a high speed. Inch by inch, the meridians that were completely barren of mystical qi were occupied and channeled. It was only then that the 10 of them let out a long sigh of relief. The breakthrough was complete. They had finally succeeded. They were relieved, but the 10 little fellows were still bleeding from all orifices, looking miserable. After Shi Wuchen and the rest withdrew their mystical qi, there was no more movement. They could not even circulate their mystical qi on their own. However, Shi Wuchen and the rest knew that it was only the impact of breaking through the barrier that had caused their souls to temporarily leave their bodies. They would regain consciousness after a while. For this period of time, it was enough for them to protect them. As the mystical qi of Shi Wuchen and the rest withdrew, the disciples regained control of their own instincts and naturally controlled their own mystical qi, allowing it to flow through the new meridians in the most stable and soothing way, like a mighty but calm river. The crisis had been completely overcome. In the Great Hall, Yunyang sat quietly on the sect leader's seat, his expression calm and indifferent. Even his gaze did not seem to change. His body, which was already stiff, had quietly relaxed at some point. Phew, Yunyang let out a long breath. That was close. This time, he had almost been tricked by Dong Qitian. If it were not for Emmy, if it were not for Dong Qitian telling Yun Yang that Hu Xiaofan would be able to get through this safely, it would be hard for anyone to survive this Emerald Cloud path, not to mention the 20% chance of success among the 10 of them. Of course, it was not that Dong Qitian was trying to trick them, but he had underestimated the medicinal efficacy. Dong Qitian's deduction was based on the superimposed effect of the Emerald Cloud pill from the Ultimate Heaven sect. The heaven and earth treasures he had used to refine the medicine were all of normal standards. However, the goods that Yun Yang had taken out were all heaven and earth treasures that had been nurtured by Emi in his deific consciousness space. The difference between them was almost a fundamental difference. Strictly speaking, the superimposed effect of the Emerald Cloud Path's 5 medicinal pills that Sun Mingxiu and the rest had consumed this time was at least a lot more potent than the ones that Dong Qitian had seen and refined before. This time, if it were not for Yun Yang's planning and asking Emi to keep a close watch, the disciples would have exploded and died the moment the Emerald Cloud pill entered their bodies. There was even the possibility that Shi Wuchen and the rest would be implicated. How King dangerous. Dong Qitian was still watching from the outside of the Great Hall with worry in his heart. When the 4th medicinal pill entered the top 10 disciples' bodies, Dong Qitian had already felt something unusual. As a great cultivator and an expert in alchemy, he was naturally acutely aware of the eruption of the qi and blood, as well as the extent of its rise into the air. It did not seem normal. How could the effect be so strong? Chapter 1047. The moment the Emerald Cloud pill entered his mouth, Dong Qitian's gaze was still filled with uncertainty. It was only until the moment his qi and blood erupted and his mystical qi ignited for the breakthrough, Dong Qitian, who was standing at the door, felt a massive force erupting from his body. The sudden turn of events almost threw him out of the room. Although the force was massive, it was still insignificant to Dong Qitian. It was not much stronger than blowing dust away, but Dong Qitian was stunned on the spot. In that instant, his mind went blank. How could the medicinal effect be so powerful? How could it be? However, Dong Qitian was no ordinary person. It was only a moment of hesitation before he understood. The medicinal effect. The medicinal effect. Each of the heaven and earth treasures that Yun Yang had given him was of perfect quality. If the medicinal effect was far superior to the ordinary ones as well, when he refined the pills, he had still calculated and measured them according to the ordinary standards. Of course, the final effect would be far beyond his expectations. Dong Qitian's face turned pale. This was going to be troublesome. Perhaps, none of the 10 disciples would survive. Was he the one who had killed these children with his own hands? Dong Qitian's thoughts were a jumbled mess, but he could not intervene. His cultivation base was high enough that the demiurge flawed 10, including Yun Yang, would not be able to defeat him single-handedly. However, the current situation could not be resolved with a high cultivation base. Once the breakthrough failed, Dong Qitian would be helpless even if he was a deity. Just as Dong Qitian was utterly dejected and blaming himself, he suddenly felt that the mystical qi aura had yet to dissipate. It flew higher and higher until it reached an extremely high point before it flew away with a loud bang like an explosion. Then everything returned to normal. All that was left was the dense aura, which was constantly connecting and growing stronger. Was it a success? Dong Qitian's dejection turned into bewilderment, and his astonishment grew to a whole new level. How was this possible? Even if it was the Emerald Cloud pill refined by the Ultimate Heaven sect, it was already lucky that 2 out of 10 people could succeed. Now that the Emerald Cloud pill that Yun Yang had asked him to refine was even more effective, how could all of them succeed? This had nothing to do with one's innate aptitude. Everyone who used it had to start from the same starting line. Those who could succeed in the end, apart from perseverance and hard work, also had to rely on luck. In fact, luck also played a considerable role. If there was even the slightest mistake, they would fall in an instant. how could they be spared? But what was the situation now? Could it be that this was actually a dream? Otherwise, how could such a life exist? Dong Qitian was flabbergasted, doubting his life for once. The huge qi field above the main hall gradually calmed down and began to converge, slowly forming into balls of. Dong Qitian was even more surprised by the subsequent developments. This was the disciples regaining their senses and starting to control their profound energy on their own, adapting to the power. Then, at this time, the masters should be slowly extracting their own profound energy from the disciples' meridians. This process was quite normal, but could it really be that fast? Could it be that my understanding of the ultimate heaven sect is actually wrong? Is it all wrong? Preposterous, preposterous. After a long, long time, in the main hall, the 11 higher-ups of the residence of 9 Supremes sat in their seats. In front of them were the top 10 disciples who had washed up and dressed up neatly. Each of them was filled with excitement. Their gazes when they looked at their masters, uncle masters, and uncle masters were filled with extreme reverence and admiration. "Thank you, master." The first disciple, Sun Mingxiu, cried out loudly. The 10 disciples knelt down in unison. Master's great kindness is as high as the sky and as deep as the earth. This disciple will never forget it in this lifetime. 3 kneels and 9 kowtows. Shi Wuchen and the others accepted the worship peacefully, their faces filled with relief. It was the relief of watching their disciples finally grow into towering trees. They smiled and nodded, all of them amiable. Yunyang spoke in a timely manner. "All right, the 10 of you, go and clean up the place that you've dirted immediately." That place would be used by the junior brothers and sisters who were behind him. "You've made it stinkier than a pig farm." The 10 disciples could not help smiling, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It seemed to be the first time in their lives that the sect leader, who had always been stern, was speaking to them in such a joking tone. "Yes, master." A moment later, the cleaning was completed. After all, they were already cultivators above the supreme level. Cleaning a few rooms was a matter of minutes. The meticulous Sun Mingxiu even checked each room carefully again. After making sure that there was no odor, he used his mental energy to scour the room one last time, sweeping away the remnants of mental energy in the room. If Head Venerate has no other instructions, these disciples shall take their leave. Go back and rest your meridians well. Familiarize yourselves with this new power. What all of you need to do next is to learn how to control it and strengthen your current foundation. Yunyang said, "Then, there's a lot of combat training. Spar with each other, spar with each other. Do you understand?" This disciple understands. There will not be the slightest delay. Looking at the disciples' gleaming, eager gazes, Yunyang knew that he did not need to remind them. These little fellows would train with all their might. He believed that it would not be too long before they could completely master this massive and unfamiliar power. At this moment, Dong Qitian was still standing by the door, staring at the main entrance of the hall like a fool. His eyes were filled with disbelief and disbelief. The sound of rumbling footsteps could be heard. If Dong Qitian had heard the footsteps under normal circumstances, he would undoubtedly have scoffed at them. This was because such footsteps symbolized that the owner was in a state where he could not control his own strength and rhythm after a major breakthrough in his cultivation base, causing him to fall under his feet. Each step was heavy, rumbling like the ground was shaking. However, to a pinnacle expert like Dong Qitian, he should adjust his condition quickly and complete the process swiftly after a breakthrough in his cultivation base. How could he show such a state in front of others and make a fool of himself? In spite of this, Dong Qitian did not have the slightest bit of such thoughts at this moment because he instantly knew where the footsteps were coming from. Following the sound, the first person in the lead stepped out of the main peak's hall. Who else could it be but the residence of 9 Supremes' eldest disciple, Sun Mingxiu? Sun Mingxiu was as handsome as usual. His complexion was fair, his physique was tall, and his hair was thick. However, his usually gentle gaze was laced with a hint of menacing sharpness. Although he walked out with heavy steps, he was still calm and poised. Chapter 1048. The other senior and junior brothers came out one after another, but their condition was not as good as Sun Mingxiu's. Not only were their steps light and heavy, but they could not control their own strength at all. They had to pause with every step they took and could lose their footing at any time, but each of them looked unprecedentedly excited. The junior disciples outside were, after all, inexperienced and could not tell what was going on. However, they could still feel that their senior brothers and sisters had become much stronger through the connection between their auras. Still, their clumsy behavior was amusing. What a joke, okay? Dong Qitian's eyes widened completely. In his eyes, these people's current cultivation base was like seeing a ghost. Sun Mingxiu was at the pinnacle of supreme acme, only one step away from ascending to honor. Yu Qingheng was at the perfected stage of supreme acme, only one step away from the pinnacle. Bai Yexing was at the perfected stage of supreme acme. He was on par with Yu Qingheng and seemed to be slightly stronger, but he had actually made a comeback. The other disciples were at the pinnacle and intermediate level of supreme acme, while the two lowest were beginner level. In short, all of them had ascended to supreme acme. It was like a hen turning into a duck in the blink of an eye. It was not just a matter of turning into a duck. They had obviously turned into a dragon. The Emerald Cloud Path this time was a success for all of them. None of them had failed. Then, where was the legendary 20% success rate? The question that followed was, where was the effect of the heaven and earth treasures that suddenly increased their quality and caused a huge impact? Had they seen a ghost? In addition, logically speaking, the Emerald Cloud Pill had raised a realm. It would be good enough if the highest cultivation base among these people, the pinnacle of immortal mystic, could reach the beginner level of supreme acme. The others would probably stop at the pinnacle of supreme acme. This was already the best result, and it was the highest achievement after the 20% success rate. But, what was going on with all of them rising to the superior supreme level? Even Sun Mingxiu and the others had risen straight to the pinnacle level. If the effect of the pill had been slightly stronger, wouldn't they have jumped straight to honor? How could this be? If they had seen a ghost just now, did they not bump into a god now? Dong Qitian had made it very clear to Yun Yang. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. The cycle of the heavenly Tao. Things that are too nourishing, once they are unable to bear it, will become extremely poisonous to the consumer. The Azure Cloud Path is also known as the King of Hell's Road in the Ultimate Heaven sect. You can either ascend to the heavens in a single step, or you can't ascend to the heavens and perish. More than 99% of the martial artists in this world don't have the fate to endure it. Under normal circumstances, unless there is no other choice, this method would not be used. Failure or death is never just a saying. The so-called "man can conquer nature" is just a lie in novels, a lie to encourage people's hearts. This was an indisputable fact. How could anyone question it? But now, at this moment, right now, he had actually succeeded. Wasn't this too ridiculous? Could it be that the miracle that only existed in novels had materialized in front of him and become reality? No, such a success rate was not just a miracle, it was a miracle. However, who was Dong Qitian? What kind of person was he? What kind of insight and experience was he? After a moment of lamentation, he acutely sensed that there must be a reason behind this. If there wasn't a huge factor, how could there be such a miracle? Sun Mingxiu stood in front of the steps and called out names. Yun Xiaoxin, Hu Xiaofan, Cheng Jiajia, Lu Changman, Lin Xiaoro. He called out 10 names. Master wants you to go in. Looking at the nervous and excited eyes of his junior brothers and sisters, Sun Mingxiu smiled and said, "Don't worry. Don't be too nervous. Once you go in, you'll be fine. You must work hard." Then, Sun Mingxiu and the others walked out with fluttering robes. They were still walking with light steps, but their speed was much faster now. It was obvious that they had to hurry back to cultivate and digest today's gains. The current situation was too unsightly. Sun Mingxiu set a goal for himself. He had to get used to it within 5 days. He still had to maintain the demeanor of an eldest senior brother. Junior brothers and sisters, when you go back, you must seize the time to consolidate your current realm. Don't be lazy, don't let master, uncle master, and sect leaders' hard work down. This advancement is undoubtedly a rare fortuitous encounter, and it's hard to come back. Even in our residence of 9 Supremes, there are not many opportunities like this. We're just a newly established sect, but Master and the others have given us such an opportunity. I'm afraid, we'll have to pay a huge price. Perhaps all the resources of the entire sect will be used up by us for this breakthrough. Junior brothers and sisters, don't think that this is normal, Meng Qi said with a smile. This is a grace that is worth our lifetime of service and risking our lives. We should remember this grace and brand it in our hearts. All the senior and junior brothers nodded silently with a heavy face, their eyes gleaming. They knew this even without eldest senior brother's reminder. How difficult was it for a sect that did not have a celestial luck banner to obtain such an opportunity? The disciples' strength and knowledge were shallow, and it would take them a long time to understand the difficulty. However, this did not stop them from being loyal to their masters and the sect. Even with their shallow knowledge and judgment, they believed that there were not many sects with celestial luck banners that could allow them to cross a great realm in an instant. As eldest senior brother Sun Mingxiu had said, sect leader, master, and the others must have really done everything they could this time. This kindness should be engraved in their hearts for the rest of their lives. Yun Xiaofan and the others swarmed in with joy and anticipation. Dong Qitian's heart, which had just been relieved, was on tenterhooks again. The highest cultivation base of these little fellows was only at the pinnacle of the heaven mystic realm. In terms of the future of their cultivation journey, Dong Qitian was actually more optimistic about Yun Xiaofan and the others compared to Sun Mingxiu and the others. Although Sun Mingxiu and the others had made amazing progress and were even above the core disciples of many sects who were actively cultivating them, in Dong Qitian's eyes, they were still the better ones and not the only ones. This was especially true for Sun Mingxiu and the other top 10 disciples. Except for Bai Yexing, the rest were experienced and prudent. More than 90% of such people would grow into elders, revered elders, guardians, and other figures of the sect. Even Bai Yexing, the best among them, had the chance to become the leader of the sect and have greater development, but it was just a chance. If he did not have a special encounter, his achievements in this life would probably be the same. It was especially so in a special sect like the residence of 9 Supremes, where geniuses were everywhere and talents were inferior to dogs. But Yun Xiaofan and the others were different. Chapter 1049. Yun Xiaofan and her group of little fellows not only had amazing talent and top-notch aptitudes, but after being cleansed by the vast amount of spiritual qi in the residence of 9 Supremes, they had become even more spirited, with muscles of gold and bones of jade. Perhaps it was because their cultivation journey had been too smooth that each of their personalities seemed particularly prickly. Yun Xiaofan was an eccentric girl, Cheng Jiajia looked honest but was actually very smart, Lin Xiaoro was soft on the outside but tough on the inside, and Lu Changman's perseverance was amazing. In terms of perseverance alone, Lu Changman was undoubtedly the best among the disciples. And then there was Xiaofan. This fellow was prickly, bad-tempered, and had all kinds of shortcomings, but one thing was undeniable. Apart from having an extraordinary state of mind and extraordinary tenacity, this fellow was also exceptionally lucky. This kind of luck had gone beyond the ordinary sense of good, almost like the feeling of being the son of destiny that only existed in novels. At least, to Dong Qitian, he could be said to be an outstanding talent in the path of luck that he had never seen before in his life, and no one could be his friend. He could casually pull out a treasure of heaven and earth that might not even be eaten once in hundreds of thousands of years, and he was still alive. His luck was unparalleled. As long as these little fellows did not die prematurely, they would certainly achieve their own glory in the future. But now, the path to Emerald Cloud, for them, would it be unnecessary tempering? Would it be pulling the seedlings up to help them grow, and would it instead destroy these few outstanding talents? Another drawback of the 5 medicines that was not really a drawback was that there was a certain requirement for the user's cultivation base. For example, there was a realm difference between Heaven Mystic and Immortal Mystic, but the real gap between these two levels was not just a little bit, it was a world of difference. According to the ancient experience of the Ultimate Heaven sect, Yun Xiaofan and the others were just within the lower limit of the requirement, but now, the efficacy of the medicine was far higher than the original level of the 5 medicines. Would there be an extremely adverse effect? At the thought of this, Dong Qitian could not help but worry more and more about whether these little fellows could make it through. It took about 4 hours for Sun Mingxiu and the other top 10 disciples to break through. Yun Xiaoxin's group, on the other hand, had spent a lot less time than the former, only a little more than 2 hours. Dong Qitian's eyes widened once more. If it was just a matter of time, Dong Qitian would not be surprised because the difference in cultivation levels between the two groups was not small. Yun Xiaoxin and the others had broken through to the realm above the Heaven Mystic realm, so it was reasonable for them to take a shorter time. What really surprised Dong Qitian was not the fact that all 10 of them advanced again, but that no one failed and no one died. That was because there were 2 weirdos in this group. Yun Xiaoxin and Hu Xiaofan. Yun Xiaoxin had broken through to the level of Immortal Mystic in her previous cultivation, but she had only just broken through, and her foundation had not been fully consolidated. And in this advancement, this time, it was a meteoric rise. It was truly a meteoric rise, catching up with the progress of the top 10 disciples in one fell swoop. In fact, his current cultivation level wasn't low at all, rising all the way to the middle level of Superior Supreme. If one were to judge it in detail, Yun Xiaoxin had not only crossed one major realm in the process of her breakthrough, but 2 major realms. When Dong Qitian saw this, his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. A 12-and-a-half-year-old Superior Supreme. Had the world gone mad, or had it gone too far? There was also Hu Xiaofan. He was only at the advanced level of Heaven Mystic previously, but this time, not only had he crossed the peak of Heaven Mystic, but he had also crossed the entire level of Immortal Mystic to reach the late stage of Supreme, almost at the level of the peak of the late stage Supreme. Such a leap was probably just a little behind Yun Xiaoxin. Both of them had crossed 2 major realms, and there was still room for improvement. To Dong Qitian, Hu Xiaofan's shocking progress was partly reasonable because he had long predicted that Hu Xiaofan, who possessed the innate spiritual marrow, would be able to safely get through the baptism of the 5 medicinal herbs. His progress was shocking. However, there should be a limit to how shocking one's progress could be. What did it mean for Hu Xiaofan to cross 2 major realms in one go? This was beyond Dong Qitian's expectations. There was also Yun Xiaoxin. Hu Xiaofan had crossed 2 major realms because of his amazing luck. How could Yun Xiaoxin cross 2 major realms as well? Moreover, her progress was even higher than Hu Xiaofan's. It did not make sense no matter what. Qing Jiejia and Lin Xiaoro had both advanced to the advanced level of Supreme. They were still on par with each other, and there was no clear winner. Both girls were slightly resentful about this result. Why didn't they surpass? Why didn't they widen the gap? Lu Changmen's performance was still average among the crowd. He had broken through to the perfected beginner level of Supreme. The other little fellows were slightly lower than Lu Changman, but they were also at the Supreme level. Dong Qitian shuddered at the thought of this outcome. He had been paying attention to every single clue and movement in the hall all this time. The first batch of 10 went in and came out unscathed. The second batch of 10 went in and came out unscathed as well. Their progress was shocking, even more so than the previous batch. Then, the third batch went in and came out again, 62 hours later, Dong Qitian was completely stupefied. He was dumbstruck and speechless for a long time. The 75 first-generation disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes had all successfully broken through during the Emerald Cloud Pill's 5 medicinal herbs. In the end, the lowest 15 were all immortal mystics, and they were all advanced immortal mystics. As for the remaining 60, 11 were superior Supremes, while the remaining 49, the cultivation base of 49 Supremes. If they were to line up, at first glance, they would look like a group of cute little Lolas, but all of them were high-level martial artists. How could this world dare to say that it was not crazy, or perhaps it was too crazy? Supreme martial artists below the age of 15 were a dime a dozen, and they were all over the place. Dong Qitian swore that he had never seen such a flourishing scene in any sect. Yes, flourishing. It was flourishing. Other than this word, there was no other word or noun that could describe it. It was a little too much to use this word on a sect that did not even have a celestial luck banner and had just been established for half a year. However, Dong Qitian really could not think of any other word to describe it. Chapter 1050. Dong Qitian felt as if the new generation was replacing the old. The residents of 9 Supremes already had the cornerstone of its prosperity, and its glory was only a matter of time. I, Dong Qitian, was reborn by my master when I was young. Then, I followed a master and cultivated in a sacred cultivation ground with rich spiritual qi. I was initiated at the age of 3, initiated at the age of 5, Jade Mystic at the age of 9, Earth Mystic at the age of 10, Heaven Mystic at the age of 11, Immortal Mystic at the age of 15, and Supreme at the age of 18. My master praised me as one of the rare prodigies in the bound of universe since the beginning of time, compared to the residents of 9 Supremes now. I've actually fallen to the level of eating dust at the bottom when I faced these little fellows my age back then. It's intolerable, but even if I can't take it anymore, I still have to endure it. Dong Qitian looked up at the sky, utterly speechless. I'm also a top-notch expert who can shake the world with a stomp of my feet, arg. Compared to Dong Qitian's gloominess and negative energy, the Demiurge flawed 10 were even worse. After more than 20 hours, each of them was exhausted like a bunch of dead dogs. When they finally reached this level, they did not even have the time to greet Yun Yang before circulating the last bit of their remaining mystical qi and returning to their respective peaks to rest. This rest was not meditation but sleep, the most extreme form of deep sleep. The exhaustion was truly exhausting. This was what it meant to be hollowed out of one's body. If they forced themselves to meditate, it would only cause further damage to their bodies. It was better to let their bodily functions adjust and recover naturally for a period of time before restoring their mystical qi. Yun Yang strolled out of the main peaks hall and was greeted by Dong Qitian's gaze as if he was an immortal. The look in Dong Qitian's eyes was complicated and unpredictable. Shock, disbelief, doubt, dreamlike hallucinations, and a sense of regret that he could not bear to recall the past. Elder Dong, it's all thanks to the spiritual medicine you've refined at the residence of 9 Supremes. Junior disciples could achieve a significant breakthrough this time. Yun Yang laughed. He was in a good mood, so he flattered Dong Qitian. In fact, it was not entirely flattery. The combination of the 5 medicines below the Emerald Cloud Pill that Dong Qitian had provided was extremely potent, and the refining method was unique as well. It was an eye-opener for Yun Yang. His praise came from the bottom of his heart. He was amazed, and he was not lying. The corners of Dong Qitian's mouth twitched a few times, speechless for a moment. Elder Dong, don't be fooled by my calm expression. I'm just pretending to be calm. I'm more worried than anyone else. Yun Yang sighed for a long time. I'm constantly worried that the 20 to 30% chance that Elder Dong mentioned will happen. If it really happens, won't I die of heartache? It's all thanks to Elder Dong's elixir this time. It's really too awesome. It's completely compatible with the disciples' physiques. Not a single one of them was lost, ha ha ha. These words were completely insincere and nonsensical. No matter how sincere they looked, they were just acting for the sake of the Best Actor award. Deep down, they were all pretentious. Dong Qitian was speechless. For the residents of 9 Supremes to have the Celestial Luck banner in the future. Elder Dong's hard work is unparalleled. Yun Yang said gratefully. According to Leader Supreme, does this mean that the disciples' successful breakthrough today is all thanks to me? The corners of Dong Qitian's mouth twitched for a long time before he finally spoke. However, every sound and every word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth. Of course. Leader Supreme Yun, let's not beat around the bush. Did you really not do anything? Me? Of course I did. I'm a guardian. I've been guarding them all the time, paying full attention. Really, I didn't even move a finger. I was so focused, so meticulous. Yun Yang laughed. I'm full of energy now. I'm not tired at all. I feel like I can flatten a mountain. Dong Qitian chuckled and said disdainfully, you don't have to push. You can flatten a mountain with your mouth. You're too kind. You're flattering me. I don't deserve this. Ha ha ha, Dong Qitian finally exploded. He grabbed Yun Yang and dragged him into the hall, his eyes glaring like bells. Young fellow, tell me honestly. What did you do? Otherwise, I'll strip you naked and walk around the square outside. Do you think I wouldn't dare to do it? His words had caught Yun Yang's weak spot in an instant. I'm the sect leader. You want me to run around naked in front of all the disciples? Are you kidding me? Of all people, the one who said this was Dong Qitian. Not only did he dare to do it, but he also had the ability to put it into action. According to Yun Yang's assessment of the old man, even if his endless divine art had another breakthrough, his destiny blade had improved, and his ability had leaped across realms like the other disciples, he would probably still not be a match for one of his hands. The gap between them was so wide. Humph. Yun Yang said angrily, a man can be killed but not humiliated. Do you think I'm someone who can be coerced into submission? However, President Dong is my residence's guest. If you really want to know, it's not impossible. Dong Qitian said, just tell me your conditions. Yun Yang was extremely wary of Dong Qitian, and the latter knew Yun Yang very well as well. He knew Yun Yang's character very well when they first met, so he made it very clear. Since Elder Dong knows that the Emerald Cloud Pill's 5 medicinal herbs didn't come from you, then it shouldn't be counted as a task. Does Elder Dong agree? Dong Qitian nodded. Of course, my role in the success of the medicine this time is indeed insignificant. It's fine if it's not counted as a task. Yun Yang said, since Elder Dong has said so, then you've only completed 2 tasks now. Besides, you haven't even finished the first task. Dong Qitian rolled his eyes and said, deal. Yun Yang chuckled and said, actually, the reason why all the disciples succeeded today is extremely simple. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to Elder Dong's few words of guidance that allowed me to react in advance. That's why there are so many fruits of my labor today. Dong Qitian was very knowledgeable and experienced. He understood it instantly and said in surprise, "You're saying that when I mentioned that Hu Xiaofan could ignore the side effects of the 5 medicinal herbs and break through safely, you imitated him to deal with today's situation?" Yunyang was pleased with himself. Elder Dong is Elder Dong indeed. You've seen through my train of thought in an instant. Although it's not right, it's not far, Dong Qitian snorted coldly. Bullsh *t, bullsh *t. So what if you've heard me expose Hu Xiaofan's unique foundation? Don't tell me you can find 74 spiritual root marrow plucking fruits and let all the disciples attain the innate spiritual marrow. What's more, even if you really manage to get enough spiritual root marrow plucking fruits, it's still not enough to make all the disciples achieve what they have now. It looks like you're not going to tell the truth. Do you really think your father won't dare to skin you? Chapter 1051. Yunyang took 3 quick steps back and waved his hands. Elder Dong, why are you so anxious? I didn't say that I copied Hu Xiaofan's condition directly. I only imitated according to the law, allowing all the disciples to imitate Hu Xiaofan's condition. That's all. Dong Qitian was still in disbelief. Do you really think that I'm a 3-year-old child? Tell me, how did you imitate? I'm really interested to learn and broaden my horizons. Yunyang was all smiles. Here's the thing. Elder Dong, do you still remember the matter of exchanging for the Commerce League that day? Dong Qitian's eyes flashed. The spirit's grave? In fact, Dong Qitian had already planned for all his disciples to achieve a breakthrough today. He pondered over it for a long time, trying to figure out what Yunyang had in his possession. Other than the spirit's grave, there seemed to be nothing else that could create such a miracle. Isn't it the spirit's grave that indirectly created this transformation? Yunyang chuckled. Tell me the details. I want to know the details. Don't give me a vague answer. I don't want to play riddles. Actually, I exchanged for 4 items that day. It was my first time bringing in something as good as the spiritual jade snow ginseng. It was probably because the ginseng's age was too high. After entering, it was actually enlightened by the senior inside and turned into a flower demon, hiss. Dong Qitian sucked in a breath of cold air. Directly enlightened into a flower demon. Could it be that the expert inside was actually a saint-level existence? According to the bound of universe legends that he knew, spiritual plants like the spiritual jade snow ginseng could only become a medicine spirit or a flower spirit at best. If it really wanted to become a demon, it would need at least hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation. However, the expert in the spirit's grave had actually enlightened it so casually. What level of cultivation did he have to be at? Creating something so casually, directly ignoring the accumulation of hundreds of thousands of years of spiritual qi? This, Dong Qitian was shocked once again, stunned on the spot. Yunyang's knowledge was still very shallow. He did not understand this level at all, so naturally, he did not know how ridiculous his boast was. However, a certain someone continued with a grin. The senior inside was very happy, saying that he was very satisfied with the gifts this time and hoped that I could keep up the good work. Then, he gave me the ethereal amethyst, the qi of vitality, the qi of Tao, and the last one that I didn't take out. Because that senior said that it was a seed for me, so, hee. Yunyang smiled with his eyes squinted. But the seed doesn't seem to be of much use to me. I've used it on my disciples' breakthrough this time. Dong Qitian's breathing quickened. What is it? How could it have such a heaven-defying effect? Just what kind of item is it that can actually create an effect that is equivalent to being filled with 10 to 100 times the innate spiritual marrow? No, in terms of the achievements of the disciples, even if they were all filled with the innate spiritual marrow, they still wouldn't be able to advance to such a level. Yunyang replied, it's nothing much. It's just a gust of primordial qi, quack, Dong Qitian almost fainted when he heard that. In the next moment, he grabbed Yun Yang's shoulder. Innate primordial qi? Are you sure? Yun Yang smiled faintly. What's there to be uncertain about? Didn't you always say that I'm inexperienced? I really don't know what this thing can be used for. When the senior bestowed this item, he only mentioned briefly that it can protect the meridians and ensure that one won't go berserk under any circumstances. It can also calm one's mind and has the effect of being used by multiple people. I'm thinking that although the effect of the innate spiritual marrow isn't exactly the same as what you've mentioned before, it can be used to deal with the 5 emerald cloud pills. Yun Yang chuckled and said, speaking of which, if it wasn't for the spirit's grave senior saying that it could be used by multiple people, I might have handed it over long ago. Dong Qitian sucked in a deep breath. At this moment, he suddenly felt a heartfelt heartache. He was no longer surprised by the successful breakthrough of his 75 disciples. Instead, his heart ached for the innate primordial qi. To use a gust of innate primordial qi to help 75 disciples break through to immortal mystic, stopping them at the intermediate level above supreme. How extravagant and wasteful was that? Innate primordial qi. Innate primordial qi. My God. Dong Qitian pulled at his hair. Such a treasure, such a treasure. You actually, he pointed outside, his eyes bloodshot. You actually wasted it on these little fellows, is it very powerful? Yun Yang was truly confused now. After all, it was something provided by Emmy, and it was something that could be provided repeatedly. Was it really that rare? Dong Qitian chuckled and narrowed his eyes as he spoke in a tone of extreme heartache, do you know? Above the Supreme is the Venerable One, above the Venerable One is the Saint, above the Saint King, above the Saint King is the Saint Venerable, and above the Saint Venerable is the Saint Emperor. Above Saint Lord is the true pinnacle of the bound of universe. It's also the highest level that humans can reach, Saint. However, below the sage realm, there is still a rank that is different from the others, the semi-sage. Innate primordial qi is the most primordial aura of Tao before the chaos is resolved. Some half-saints can't become saints even after hundreds of thousands of years. It's because they don't have the opportunity. And this opportunity is a gust of innate primordial qi. Dong Qitian laughed so hard that he looked like he was crying. The senior in the spirit's grave was very generous. His original intention in giving you the innate primordial qi should be to give you a bit of spiritual root, which is the true meaning of a seed that you mentioned just now. With this seed, as long as you don't die, your future path of cultivation will be smooth. You'll definitely be able to ascend to the level of a saint. That seed is the foundation of Tao that will pave your path to becoming a saint. Dong Qitian lowered his voice and gritted his teeth, wanting to chew Yun Yang up. You actually squandered it so easily, used it, you actually dare to say that it's useless now. Dong Qitian's hair stood on end as he punched his chest twice, venting the heartache he was feeling right now. He felt as if his heart had been split into 8 pieces. It was so painful that he could not breathe, and it was difficult for him to calm down. Don't stop me, I want to die. I can't live anymore. How dare someone say that the innate primordial qi is useless? I'm going to spit out 100 feet of blood. Yun Yang was stunned when he heard Dong Qitian's explanation. He stuttered, it's that powerful? Chapter 1052. Yun Yang frowned as if his heart was aching. Since it's so powerful, I'll find a chance to ask for a share from the senior inside in the future. He should still give it to me. After all, he's so generous this time. It might not be something rare, Dong Qitian chuckled coldly. What is destiny? Destiny is a chance that you won't get again if you miss it. If you miss it once, how can there be a second chance? If you seize it, it's destiny. If you don't, you're just courting death. You're actually delusional enough to want to do it again. Dream on. You won't have it again in your lifetime. Yunyang said hesitantly, it might not be that absolute. When the senior gave me the primordial qi, I saw it clearly. He had 7 to 8 more strands in his hand, like a clump of silk. He gave me one so casually. Maybe he won't be so stingy in the future. 7 to 8 more strands? Dong Qitian sucked in a deep breath, then another deep breath. Then, he fainted. Let me die. What did I hear? This must be a dream. The success of the Emerald Cloud journey this time had caused the entire residence of 9 Supreme's ability, be it in terms of overall ability or actual combat power, to undergo a huge leap within 2 days. It was almost a qualitative change. Almost the entire residence of 9 Supremes was happy and excited about this change. The reason why it was almost was probably because there were still people who were not so happy, especially when they were the sect's higher-ups. Other than the lead Supreme Yunyang, the Demiurge Flawed 10, the 8 Supremes, 2 elders, and a guest, Dong Qitian, there was only one higher-up in the residence of 9 Supremes higher-ups, Qian Duo Duo. Qian Duo Duo was initially happy about the residence of 9 Supremes disciples' breakthroughs and improvements, but he could only cry after that. During this period of time, under Qian Duo's painstaking management, he saw the increasing resources and wealth in the warehouse. He almost did not have to spend any of it, and it only grew in a straight line. He could not have been more pleased. Qian Duo Duo was obsessed with money. He only had one thought, the more, the better. It would be best if there was only an influx and no outflow. It would be best if all the money in the bound of universe entered my warehouse, and then, continued to enter without spending a single cent. That would be the best. However, not long after this beautiful dream began, it was shattered. It was too expensive for Sun Mingxiu, Yun Xiuxin, and the others to cultivate. Their monthly allowance was not much. After all, the residence of 9 Supremes was quite rich now. There were millions of upper-class spiritual jade in the warehouse alone. As long as it was used for cultivation, they could apply for it and use it freely. It did not matter if they squandered it or not. As long as they could improve their cultivation base, everything was negotiable. As for mid-grade and low-grade spiritual jades, they were sufficient for cultivation for a very, very long time. Perhaps, even if the seas ran dry and the rocks crumbled, the earth turned to dust, the world would not be able to use them. The reason why he dared to say such words was because the black and white dual malevolent raiders of all but God's actions were too impressive, and they had accumulated too many sources of wealth. More importantly, everyone's usage rate was actually very low. After all, the cultivation base of everyone in the residence of 9 Supremes, including Yunyang, was not high. Among the top 10 disciples, there was a clear hierarchy. Sun Mingxiu was the leader, and he received 2 high-grade spirit jades, 20 mid-grade spirit jades, and 100 low-grade spirit jades. As for Yu Qingheng, who was the second, he only received 1 piece of upper-class spiritual jade every month, and the rest were the same. Bai Yexing, who was the third, did not receive any upper-class spiritual jade at all. The 4th, 5th, and 6th disciples had their allowance reduced by another level, 10 mid-grade spirit jades, and 100 low-grade spirit jades. 7th, 8th, and 90 were the lowest, and they only received 5 mid-grade spirit jades, and 100 low-grade spirit jades. As for Yun Xiuxin's batch, except for her, who was given 3 mid-grade spirit jades and 50 low-grade spirit jades as a special reward for being the top disciple for a long time, the others all received 1 mid-grade spirit jades and 10 low-grade spirit jades. As for the ordinary disciples, each of them received 2 pieces of low-grade spirit jades per month. However, this little amount of resources was not enough for cultivation. The hierarchy was obvious and strict. If you wanted more, you needed to be stronger. Only by being stronger could you have status, have the right to speak, and enjoy more resources. The principle of survival of the fittest and survival of the fittest was also applicable in the residence of 9 Supremes, and it was more immediate and obvious. Qian Duo felt that this was just a drop in the bucket. Just the income from wiping out the human traffickers these days could be used for many years. But after the little guys broke through, Qian Duo felt more and more uncomfortable day by day. He wanted to cry but had no tears, and his heart ached from time to time. The disciples' allowance did not exceed the amount. However, the training losses caused by them were more than 100 times greater than before. With few exceptions, the training facilities of the sect were all damaged in a very short time. These boys had just broken through, so their foundation was not stable, and they could not control the use of their strength at all. Coupled with the explosive increase of their strength, they were so excited that they were competing with each other to make trouble. Fatty was smart enough to change the facilities to the supreme level, but on the afternoon of the change, all the facilities were damaged again. Fatty, who felt like he was in trouble, did not believe it and changed the facilities to the supreme level again. He was confident that he could handle it for a long time, but the reality was extremely cruel. By the next morning, all the facilities were damaged again. What the F***ck are you doing? Why don't you go to heaven if you are so capable? Qian Duo no longer wanted to cry, but he simply wanted to shed his tears. Do you know how much I've spent to change the facilities in the past few days? Even superior supreme level training facilities were very difficult to buy, you know, every time I spend money, it's like I'm cutting my flesh. Do you know how it feels? But Yun Yang, the Supreme, completely ignored it. Faced with Fatty's complaints, Yun Yang only said, "You said you're the majordomo of the residence of 9 Supremes. Of course, you should be the one to handle this. As long as it doesn't delay your cultivation, the rest is not important." Fatty was dumbfounded, his fat jiggling with anger. The rest is not important? My mood is not important? I owe all of you. Yun Yang said faintly, just tell me if you're doing it or not. If you really feel tired, I'll find someone to replace you. The majordomo of the residence of 9 Supremes must be competent in his job. I'm just joking and nagging. How is it not enough? I'll go right away. I promise to complete the mission. Just wait and see. Before he finished speaking, little Fatty had already disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Chapter 1053. After this incident, Dong Qitian's attitude toward Yun Yang had returned to how it was before. No, he seemed to be a little embarrassed. It was probably like he had an invisible sense of inferiority in front of Yun Yang. Sometimes, when he suddenly thought of something, he would glare at Yun Yang, sigh, and then leave. Obviously, when he thought of the primordial qi of innate primordial qi, his regret flared up again. All the disciples have improved. Why haven't you, the sect's higher-ups, improved as well? Dong Qitian was a little puzzled. Although the Emerald Cloud Pills effect is much weaker for a saint's cultivation base and it's impossible to elevate a realm, it's still possible to elevate a small realm. The residence of 9 Supreme's priority is to elevate its overall combat strength. Why not? Yun Yang smiled and said, "There's no hurry." Dong Qitian was stunned. It was only a few days before the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. Why was he not in a hurry? In fact, the disciples were not the only ones who had improved by leaps and bounds during this period of time. Shi Wuchen and the others also took a big step forward. Not to mention others, Shi Wuchen and the others had helped the disciples for more than 20 hours in a row. Throughout the whole process, they were exhausted, and their mental strength was also exhausted. It was even more exhausting than fighting more than 10 fierce battles in a row. After a night of deep sleep, when everyone recovered, they were surprised to find that their strength had made a breakthrough. Now, the 9 peak masters, including Yun Yang, were 4th-level saints, while Shi Wuchen, Luo Dejiang, Yun Yang, and Tai Qingcang were 4th-level pinnacle saints. One more step and they would be saint kings. Under such a premise, it should not be difficult for them to break through to the level of Saint King with the help of the Emerald Cloud Pill. It was even possible for them to reach the pinnacle of 1st-level Saint King. The combination of the Emerald Cloud Pill's 5 medicinal herbs had a great effect on Sun Mingxiu and the other junior disciples, but it was extremely dangerous. However, for cultivators like Yun Yang and Shi Wuchen who were already at the level of saint level and above, it was a complete help. Why is that? Dong Qitian was puzzled. In my estimation, residents of 9 Supreme's current strength is more than enough to deal with the challenge of the last place in the primary celestial luck banner. I plan to save this matter of increasing my strength for the future, when I need it. For example, when I get the 8th or 7th place. Maybe even the 1st place. He lifted his head to look at Dong Qitian, a sly smile on his face. If I raise it now, I'll only be revealing my trump card. It'll make others more cautious and covetous. It's not a good thing for the residents of 9 Supremes. Dong Qitian sighed. You haven't forgotten to trick others even at a time like this. I really don't know why you have so many tricks up your sleeves. Why don't you stop calling yourself Supreme Cloud and just call yourself Supreme Sly? As your opponents, those people are really too treacherous, Yun Yang chuckled. Supreme Sly? That's not a good name. I'm saving it for a rainy day. This is wisdom, okay? How is it sly? Even if I change my name, I should be called Supreme Wit, right? Dong Qitian shook his head, refusing to comment further. He could already imagine the tragic end of Yun Yang's enemies. All the higher-ups of the residents of 9 Supremes were here. The highest one was only a 4th-level saint. Our strength is superior, and we have the confidence to defeat the enemy. However, if a peak 1st-grade Saint King or a 2nd-grade Saint King suddenly appeared during the real battle tomorrow, how would you fight? You would be completely at a loss. The biggest taboo in a battle was to make a mistake in predicting the enemy's strength. A single mistake would be enough to lose the whole game, not to mention a serious mistake in predicting the opponent's strength. If there were high-level Saint Kings in the sect, there might still be room to maneuver. What if there weren't? Wouldn't that mean being beaten down helplessly? Or perhaps the sect originally had enough combat strength, but when they met the day before yesterday, they did not see any danger and wanted to preserve their strength, so they left early and did not participate in the battle. It was not impossible. If that was the case, it would be a great injustice. Yun Yang smiled faintly. Senior, you're also someone who has been through a lot of battles. Don't you think I'm a necessary strategy? Dong Qitian stared at him, still shaking his head and sighing, not saying a word. By right, Dong Qitian was used to being shocked during this period of time, but that was because he did not know who the biggest surprise was. Almost everyone in the residence of 9 Supreme's cultivation base had skyrocketed, including Yun Yang. The growth of Yun Yang's cultivation base was not only reflected in the mystical Qi cultivation base, because his endless divine art, which did not belong to the mystical Qi cultivation base, had also grown tremendously. The advancement of the endless divine art was far more difficult than the growth of mystical Qi cultivation base, because it involved the factor of karmic Qi. Now, Yun Yang's endless divine art had stopped at the 5th stage. Ever since he stepped into the bound of universe and climbed to the 5th stage by chance, he had been continuously accumulating at this stage. When Yun Yang operated the residence of 9 Supremes to annihilate the murderous organization, he could clearly feel a large amount of karmic Qi being collected, cultivating the endless divine art all the way to the pinnacle of the 5th stage. As long as he took another step forward, he would be able to break through. The essential difference between the endless divine art and other cultivation methods was that it was still not enough to observe the peak of a certain level of cultivation base. Ascending to the peak only meant that Yun Yang could unleash the highest power of that level. If he wanted to break through further, he had to wait for the karmic chi to reach the tipping point as well, or else he would be stuck at the pinnacle of the 5th stage. The river was still the same river, just that it could no longer expand despite the constant influx of water. Yun Yang was speechless and helpless about this state. What did the pinnacle power of the 5th stage of the endless divine art mean? It probably meant that the power that Yun Yang could currently unleash had more than doubled from before. This situation made Yun Yang a little speechless. When he had broken through to the 5th stage, he had consumed the karmic chi of killing millions of sinners to achieve the breakthrough. Now, to break through to the 6th stage, he needed tens of millions of karmic chi. Ever since he came to the bound of universe, Yun Yang and the entire sect had gone out to kill many murderous traffickers and had gained a lot, but the total number was not even half of the base number of karmic chi. Although the karmic chi obtained from killing a person in the bound of universe was 10 times more than in Tianxian, it was still not enough to cover the amount that he had gained during this period of time. Chapter 1054. He had only wiped out dozens of human trafficking organizations, but there were more than 1,000 of these evil scum in the bound of universe. Each human trafficking organization had at least 50 people, and the larger ones even had thousands of people. These people had committed so many sins that their deaths were not to be regretted. He only needed to find and kill them one by one. As long as this continued, it would not be long before he could break through to the 6th level. After this flag battle, the residents of 9 Supremes needs to make another move. It's time for the disciples to travel the martial world with their individual strength. Yun Yang thought to himself. Master, Hu Xiaofan, Yun Xiaoxin came running again. Yun Yang sighed. Can't these two enemies stop fighting for a day? In Dong Qitian's eyes, the cultivation of the residents of 9 Supremes disciples was a ghastly sight, and he was in awe. Now that these children from the lowest level of society had the chance to become stronger, the desperation and hard work they had put in would move anyone who saw it. This was a cultivation that was completely reckless. In the dead of the night, disciples could often be seen cultivating in the plaza. Each of them was diligently training while restraining themselves from making too much noise. Each of their moves and styles were executed with extreme seriousness. Shadows of sweat would appear on the ground every once in a while. Everyone, be it boys or girls, always had strands of hair stuck to their scalps. That was how it was. Each of them gritted their teeth and pouted their lips. It had only been 5 to 6 days since the Emerald Cloud Path, but even the disciples with the worst talent had already familiarized themselves with the new power. The time taken to adapt was twice as fast as the 12 days Dong Qitian had estimated. Although it was only a preliminary familiarization and there was still a considerable gap between mastery and mastery, the results and progress were still enough to shock any sect in the bound of universe. Each of the 75 first-generation disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes would be a prodigy if they were in other sects. Dong Qitian sighed inwardly and gave a shocking comment. However, he also knew that the sense of belonging these children had to the residents of 9 Supremes could not be broken by external forces, even without the heavenly oath. Until then, their lives had been a blur. Only the residents of 9 Supremes gave them a glimmer of hope. Moreover, most of the children knew very well that their aptitude was nothing more than trash at that time. Those with really good aptitudes had already been picked out. If he was really talented, he wouldn't have been abused in the hands of the human traffickers. He would really just be a piece of trash. However, when they came to the residents of 9 Supremes, their masters did not despise them but used many resources to transform them. This kindness would never be forgotten. There were still 2 months and 3 days before the Celestial Luck Banner tournament. Another 3 days later, Sun Bai Yexing broke through the honor realm and officially surpassed Yu Chengheng to become the residence's second honor disciple. 3 days later, Bai Yesheng broke through to the Venerable Realm and officially surpassed Yu Chengheng, becoming the second disciple of the Venerable Realm. In just half a day, Yu Chengheng also succeeded in breaking through. After Yun Xiaofan stepped into the realm of Supreme Being, she continued to make progress and broke through to the peak of Supreme Being, only one step away from the realm of Venerable, only below Sun Mingxiu, Bai Yesheng, and Yu Chengheng. Hu Xiaofan had advanced to the high level of Supreme Being, while Lin Xiaoro and Cheng Jiejia had reached the mid-tier. There was also Lu Changman. He had also broken through to the level of Supreme Martial Artist, the beginner level. So far, among the first-generation disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes, there were 3 genuine Supremes, more than 20 Supremes, and the rest were all pinnacle Supremes. Basically, every single one of them was only one step away from breaking through. Dong Qitian, who had witnessed the residents of 9 Supremes grow from nothing to such an extent in such a short period of time, was speechless. There was really no room for him to comment. At the same time, the fight within the residents of 9 Supremes was in full swing. No swearing, no scolding of elders, no fighting in private, and no injuries. Then, there was only one thing left to compete for: ranking. The top 10 disciples were, of course, the top level of all the disciples. Below the top 10 disciples, the disciples had set their own ranking. There were 10 ranks above Supreme Being. There were also 10 Supreme Martial Artists. Although there were no more heaven and earth mystics, the ranking was still maintained. After all, there were still junior brothers and sisters in the future, and everyone's cultivation base had to go through the process of going from low to high. During this period of time, Yun Xiaofan and the other little fellows basically had a proud look on their faces, and they often referred to themselves as "I'm your senior sister" or "I'm your senior brother." Once again, the ranking of the top 10 disciples was filled with climaxes, one after another, and there were endless surprises. First, it was Sun Mingxiu who broke out in a cold sweat. Yu Chengheng's ranking had fallen to 3rd place, so he was naturally not a threat to Sun Mingxiu. However, Bai Yesheng, who had caught up from behind, launched a strong attack and almost knocked him, the eldest senior brother, off his high horse. The two of them fought fiercely. Sun Mingxiu had exerted all his strength and used all his trump cards to successfully suppress Bai Yesheng. It was not until the end of the battle that Sun Mingxiu finally felt at ease. Then, he was shocked to find that his robe had been soaked with cold sweat. It's too close. It's too incredible. If I don't fight with all my might, I might become the second junior brother in the next competition. If this is true, it will be too embarrassing. Bai Yesheng, who had just secured his position as one of the top 10 first-generation disciples of residents of 9 Supremes, broke out in a cold sweat. When he faced Yu Chengheng's challenge, he had already expected it, so it was not a surprise that he could suppress him with one move. But when he faced Yun Xiaofan, who was fighting with her head held high, he was almost defeated by her, even though there was a gap between them. In the battle, Bai Yesheng had taken the upper hand and gained the upper hand by virtue of his rank. Unexpectedly, Yun Xiaofan, who had never given up, suddenly had an epiphany in the battle and broke through to the realm of Venerable. If Yun Xiaofan had not made a breakthrough at the last minute, which had greatly improved her cultivation base and made her unable to control it as she pleased and accurately as before, Bai Yesheng might have really failed miserably in such an easy task. After winning the battle with great difficulty, Bai Yesheng's face was pale for a long time. At this point in time, the quality of one's aptitude, as well as the degree of one's effort, began to gradually show the difference. The new ranking of the top 10 first-generation disciples of residents of 9 Supremes was released. The top disciple was still Sun Mingxiu, the second disciple was Bai Yesheng, the third disciple was Yu Chengheng, and the fourth disciple was Yun Xiaofan, who had made great progress but was defeated by Bai Yesheng. Yun Xiaofan had almost broken into the top 3 of the top 10. Although it was shocking, it was not as shocking as another new top 10 disciple. Chapter 1055. Hu Xiaofan. The unexpected name had blinded the eyes of the demiurge flawed 10 and the other 9 disciples. Yun Xiaoxin's rapid progress was seen by everyone. Not only did she have such an achievement, but her foundation was already one of the best in the entire residence of 9 Supremes. Before this, it was mostly because of the short time of cultivation in her young age that her talent was not obvious. However, after she became Yun Yang's disciple and went through a series of events, she was like a phoenix reborn from the fire. She had golden skin, jade bones, innate physique, exquisite meridians, and exquisite mind. Although everyone was shocked by her achievement today, they did not think it was a big deal after a detailed analysis. They even felt that it was a little unexpected but reasonable. But Hu Xiaofan, this thorn, who had been recognized by everyone in the residence of 9 Supremes, had actually followed Yun Xiaoxin into the top 10 first-generation disciples of the residence of 9 Supremes. Although he was only at the bottom of the list, he was still the 10th senior brother of the younger generation of disciples. This was simply, there is still 1 month and 25 days before the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. The competition is held once every 10 days, and it can still be held 4 more times. I hereby announce that the top 10 disciples will represent the residence of 9 Supremes in the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner this time. The Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner this time will be the beginning of the foundation of the residence of 9 Supremes' indomitable foundation. Yun Yang's voice echoed in the air for a long time. Those who have made meritorious deeds for the sect in this Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner will automatically become true disciples. Those who are promoted to true disciples will be rewarded with a bottle of divine pills, a piece of ethereal amethyst, 500 pieces of superior-grade spiritual jade, and a divine weapon. Their deeds will be recorded in the history of the residence of 9 Supremes, and their portraits will be kept in the ancestral temple forever for future disciples to worship. The series of words that came out of Yun Yang's mouth made all the disciples' eyes turn red with anger, including Sun Mingxiu. The top 10 disciples for the last time. The Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. This was just a process. The result was what really moved them. A true disciple. A bottle of divine pills. A piece of ethereal amethyst. A divine weapon. Recorded in the history. Their portraits in the ancestral temple would be worshipped by all generations. On the other hand, the disciples did not care about the 500 pieces of high-grade spiritual jades. Compared to the other rewards, what was the 500 pieces of high-grade spiritual jades? One was material, the other was glory. They couldn't be compared at all. How could they compare? Even Hu Xiaofan, who had always been a thorn in the side, had his eyes lit up like a searchlight, and his expression was ferocious and terrifying. In fact, it wasn't just Hu Xiaofan. All the disciples' breathing became heavier in an extremely short period of time. Everyone has a chance, not just those who rank highly in the tournament. Yun Yang's voice was indifferent, but it immediately ignited the passion of all the disciples. There are still 40 days left. 40 days later, the top 10 disciples will be decided. Then, the residence of 9 Supremes will officially go for the Celestial Luck Banner. I will be invincible in the flag battle. I don't know how many of the top 10 disciples can follow me. Right now, I don't know how many of them will be able to enter the ranks of the top 10 disciples. Disperse. With the command, Yun Yang and the rest of the higher-ups left in a flash, but none of the disciples beneath them moved. At this moment, almost all the disciples were gnashing their teeth and staring at the top 10 disciples who were still on the platform with bright eyes, thinking carefully, who should I pull down? How can I pull them down? Can I really pull them down? The expressions of the 10 great disciples were also solemn, and they were extremely vigilant. I want to keep my position and even go further. Bai Yexing and Yun Xiaoxin's blazing eyes fell on Sun Mingxiu almost at the same time. They were like two hungry wolves staring at a piece of juicy fresh meat. Sun Mingxiu, who had always been calm, couldn't help but shiver. He knew very well that Yu Chengheng had been left behind by him now, and with Bai Yesheng between them, it was impossible for Yu Chengheng to catch up with him. But Bai Yesheng had grown into his greatest enemy. Bai Yesheng had been chasing him all the way, and he had felt great pressure in this round of the tournament. There was also Yun Xiaoxin, who was almost in the top 3. This little girl's potential was simply endless and limitless. Now, she was catching up to Bai Yesheng. Although her ranking was lower than Yu Chengheng's, Yu Chengheng believed that Yun Xiaoxin had a 100% chance of surpassing him in the next tournament. Even Hu Xiaofan, who was ranked last, was very likely to catch up to him in the 3rd or 4th tournament. There was also Lin Xiaoro and Cheng Jiejie. Sun Mingxiu suddenly had a subtle feeling that he was surrounded by a pack of wolves, and Yu Chengheng also felt helpless, as if he was besieged on all sides and born at the wrong time. But what could he do? If he didn't want to accept his fate, he could only fight with his life. In the next 40 days, even Shi Wuchen and the others felt terrified. Now, they were not urging them to cultivate but to rest. Go and rest. Look at you now, boy. You're still trying to be brave. Go back now. Master, let's practice a little longer, just a little longer. Okay, we'll go back and rest soon. Master, you came at the right time. I have a question that I can't figure out and want to ask you. Let's sit over there for a while, and you can tell me. Boss Yun's announcement has completely driven the disciples crazy. Shi Wuchen said helplessly. Luo Dajiang snorted and said, You're still a little stronger. Your disciple is still the top disciple, but my Yu Chengheng has fallen to 3rd place, and it's a fluke. If he does it again, he'll most likely fall to 4th place. Shi Wuchen smiled bitterly. My 1st place. When the last tournament comes, it's still uncertain whether I can still sit on the top. It's not optimistic. Kong Luoyue smiled helplessly like Shi Wuchen. I wonder how far Bai Yesheng can go. Why can't he reach the top? As he spoke, he shook his head with a worried look. Bastard! Shi Wuchen and Luo Dajiang looked down on this guy who was obviously showing off. Off to the side, Ren Qinghuang said lightly, I don't know whether Bai Yesheng can go up there, and I don't care whether Sun Mingxiu can be saved or not. All I care about now is how far Yun Xiaoxin can go. What do you think will happen if this girl reaches the top in the final competition? That will be interesting, very interesting. Kong Luoyue did not feel good after listening to the 2 interesting words. Motherf ****. That was heart-wrenching. How could they not see that it was only luck that Bai Yesheng was able to suppress Yun Xiaoxin this time? If he was not lucky in the future, how could he win? Chapter 1056. Suddenly, Luo Dajiang snorted. Now that I'm the master of the 3rd peak, I'm so busy from morning to night that I don't even have time to fall in love. Luo is still waiting for me. Sigh. The other bachelors all looked at him with disdain. Damn it, don't you know we hate lovey-dovey people the most? Aren't you too tired of being together every day? Jiang Luo is already living in your 3rd peak. What else do you want? Dajiang, it's not that I want to criticize you, but the disciples are working so hard. As their masters, how can we be idle all day? Now is really not the time to talk about love affairs. Shi Wuchen said, the special training has to continue. I want to go back to sleep, and I'll wake up early tomorrow morning to continue the training. Well said. I'm going to sleep, too. Lan Ruojuan crossed his arms, threw his head back, and shook his head. I'm not in the mood, and I'm not interested in listening to you show off. Lan Ruojuan and Shi Bujia were in the worst mood. Initially, they each had a disciple who managed to squeeze into the top 10, but they were all beaten down in the grand competition this time. So far, among the top 10 disciples, only they had lost their heads. It would be strange if they were in a good mood. 10 days later, in the competition of the 9 peaks, Sun Mingxiu once again secured the first place, while Bai Yexing secured the second place. However, Yu Qingheng was defeated by Yun Xiuxin and slipped out of the top 3. Moreover, the gap between Yun Xiuxin's cultivation base and Bai Yexing's was very small, almost on par. In fact, the gap between Bai Yexing and Sun Mingxiu was almost the same. Now, it could be said that the cultivation base of the top 3 was on the same level. Hu Xiaofan, on the other hand, had climbed from 10th place to 8th place. Obviously, he had made considerable progress. Qing Jiejia and Lin Xiaoro had also made great progress. Although they had not made it into the top 10 this time, they were already at the edge of the top 10. One of them was 11th, and the other was 12th. Lin Xiaoro kept a close eye on Qing Jiejia, and although she was a step behind, she refused to let go. Lu Changmen's ranking had also increased, and he was currently ranked 15th. The ranking of the disciples rose and fell, but both those who advanced and those who retreated were still gritting their teeth to cultivate and spar with all their might. When they cultivated now, not only did they rely on the rich spiritual qi in the residence of 9 supremes, they also generously used the spiritual jade that they were reluctant to use previously to aid their cultivation. Pills that he usually treated like treasures and would not use lightly were tossed into his mouth by the handful. Some disciples went out and saw some fruits that they did not recognize. Without hesitation, they plucked them off and threw them into their mouths. What if it was the marrow-cleansing fruit that Hu Xiaofan ate? Faced with this situation, little fatty Qian Duo wanted to cry but had no tears. He had just spent a lot of money to buy the antidote pills, but he had used up almost half of them in just a few days. The battle for the banner hadn't even started yet. What the hell was going on? This is too unjust. In the blink of an eye, it was the next round of the 9 Peaks Grand Competition. Now, the eyes of everyone in the residence of 9 Supremes were basically on a few key people: Sun Mingxiu, Yun Xiuxin, Bai Yexing, and Hu Xiaofan. The main reason why Hu Xiaofan, who had just entered the top 10 not long ago, could attract so much attention was that everyone was very interested to see how far he could go. Sun Mingxiu, Yun Xiuxin, and Bai Yexing, on the other hand, were interested in who would be the chief disciple and who would be the champion. The battle between the 3 of them had also reached a point where it was like a raging fire. Yun Xiuxin stepped forward and challenged Bai Yexing. Bai Yexing had expected this battle, and the 2 of them fought fiercely. Unfortunately, in the end, both of them had exhausted all their strength and collapsed to the ground, but there was still no winner. According to the agreement, if it was a tie, the ranking would still be the same. Bai Yexing would still be second, and Yun Xiuxin would still be third. When Bai Yexing rested, he fought with Sun Mingxiu again, but there was still no winner. Both of them had fought until they were exhausted, and Bai Yexing could not go any further. After the 2 matches ended in a draw, it was not because of the excellence of the competition, because when Yun Xiuxin challenged Sun Mingxiu, the fight lasted until both of them could not even lift their fingers, and there was still no clear winner. In terms of results alone, the 3 of them were neck and neck in this round. Even the Demiurge Flawed 10, who had been through hundreds of battles for half their lives, had never seen such a situation. Everyone was a man of keen eyes. They had already evaluated the cultivation base and strength of Sun Mingxiu and the other 2. In terms of cultivation base alone, there was still a difference between Sun Mingxiu, Bai Yexing, and Yun Xiuxin. Among the 3 of them, Sun Mingxiu's cultivation base was obviously the strongest. Bai Yexing's forte was that his mind was strange, and his moves were even more unexpected. Every time he waved his hand, it would be extremely bizarre. Last but not least, Yun Xiuxin's moves were ever-changing, and her movement technique was even more agile. Sun Mingxiu walked the path of a dignified master, and he would never take risks for luck. It could be said to be a grand and imposing formation. Bai Yexing, on the other hand, was proficient in the Tao of treachery, and his moves were always unpredictable. He could be said to be elusive and unpredictable. Yun Xiaoxin, on the other hand, was full of intelligence when she attacked, defended, and dodged, and almost every move was full of spiritual energy. It caused everyone to sigh with amazement. However, the rules were the rules, and a tie was a loss. So, Sun Mingxiu was still the first, followed by Bai Yexing and Yun Xiaoxin. Hu Xiaofan's ranking rose again in this round of the competition, and he soared to the 5th place. In the end, he was firmly suppressed by Yu Chengheng, who had fallen to the 4th place. The junior brothers and sisters below clenched their fists and glared at him, panting heavily. They admired him in their hearts, but not a single one of them was convinced. Their desire to be ranked among the top 10 or even to be ranked among the top had never changed. Instead, they became even more determined. The third Nine Peaks Grand Competition came soon. This time, no matter how unwilling Sun Mingxiu was, he was defeated by Bai Yexing and tasted the pleasure of reaching the top for the first time. On the other hand, Yun Xiaoxin's result was not as good as the last time. Not only was she defeated by Sun Mingxiu, but she was also defeated by Bai Yexing. Hu Xiaofan did not go any further, but this time, he and Yu Chengheng were evenly matched. In the end, both of them collapsed to the ground, unable to catch their breath, and could only roll their eyes. Cheng Jiejia and Lin Xiaoro still advanced side by side and rushed into the top 10. One was 9th, while the other was 10th, and Cheng Jiejia still won by a little. Lu Changmen's ranking had also improved, and he was now ranked 12th, almost biting the tail of the top 10. Compared to the original list of the top 10 disciples, almost half of them had changed this time. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.